Howdy-ho, neighbors. It's just past 3 o'clock, 3:06 to be precise. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson today on this Thursday, April 20, 2023. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Of course, you knew that. It is my episode 323. You probably didn't know that, and I hope you spend the entire 4 hours with us today. We've lots to unpack and lots to discover and uncover together. And I appreciate your participation. 615-737-9986 is the telephone number. You can also super text us. That's up and running as usual. 615-737-9986. Isn't it funny? I first get here, there's no super text line. Now it's as usual. Mason's behind the glass, screening your telephone calls, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as possible. I appreciate him and his hard work. There's young McMorey in the newsroom gathering headlines, and it has been a rather busy news day. We got news about this whistleblower out of Washington, D.C. that wants to tell all regarding the Justice Department's beholden to the White House with regard to the Hunter Biden scandal. In other words, while Joe Biden regularly says he has no idea what the business dealings were, he has no idea what's going on, he's running the cleanest ship that's ever been, it isn't so, and repeatedly we know that it isn't so. In the meantime, I'm getting blown up on my phone right now.
Did I cause this problem for you?
I don't know. I don't think you did. I think that there is an effort to. Let me see how to put this. There's an effort to make sure that all sides of the story are being told here.
As well, there should be.
As well, there should be.
Now, what are we talking about right now? The breaking news.
Right.
And Matt has allowed me to stick around.
But she's all fired up, and she said, I'm sticking.
I'm staying. Because here's the thing. There's a story out there about a Republican lawmaker that has now resigned, and he was found guilty by an ethics committee with 2 Republicans on it and 2 Democrats on it. He was found guilty of violating ethics when it comes to harassment and discrimination, but the harassment is what he's accused of, with an intern. Definitely 1 and possibly 2. There were complaints made. Phil Williams has the details of what those conversations were with the intern. And then Phil Williams also had the information that the intern was moved out of the Capitol Towers where she was staying, and her furniture shipped back to East Tennessee. They moved her to a downtown hotel to get her away from this particular lawmaker who is also living at Capitol Towers. I have learned he is indeed single, by the way, and we're talking about Scotty Campbell. What my problem is, and my question, well, your question was state money used to move her out?
Right.
You know, because if they put her in a downtown hotel, I would think state money would have paid for that. I don't know that, but that's the question. But my question is, why on earth, if Cameron Sexton received the complaint on March the 29th, which is what the news stories out there from Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 4, Tennessee, are all saying, why is it today, April the 20th, that he has submitted his resignation? Why didn't Cameron Sexton say, no, you resign today, the 29th, or we will boot you, we will expel you, like he expelled 2 other lawmakers?
You're all fired up.
Right, I am very fired up.
I know.
This is
I get
horrible.
It. All right,
and those are my questions.
So here's a few other questions. We're being told, I'm trying to get some information on background, and I'm trying to have the Speaker of the House come on today to speak to this, and maybe he will, and maybe he's busy. I mean, I understand the House is in session right now. I get it. He's in the well. But when did Cameron know about this situation? We're told, per the report, that it was March 29th. If that is accurate, what did he do with it between then and the time that it was publicly made available by news organizations doing their own investigative research? It looks bad. There could be an explanation, but it looks awful that the Speaker of the House, had he knowledge, as we believe he does, on March 29th, that he did nothing with it until a television station broke the story. And then suddenly he resigns. All of a sudden, the guy resigns when the TV station breaks the story. So that's question one. When did Cameron know about this, and what was he doing between March 29th, if that's in fact when he found out, and now? Who made the decision to move this intern out of the, what is it called? The towers? The Capitol Towers.
Mm-hmm.
Who made the decision to move the intern out of the towers and into a hotel? Who paid for that? Why? And this is why did you make a decision to move her?
Why does she have to be the one to move? Why not move him?
Well, and even beyond that, why did you decide to do that? Was she, I mean, did she feel harassed to the point that she did not want to be in the same building with this person? That's a perfectly legitimate response to what we're told happened. If that's the case, why did you not move to get this dunderhead resigned before now? Mm-hmm. Right then. Why not move his ass back to his home district, wherever that is, as opposed to shuffling an intern around who's been sexually harassed? And folks, this is not a single lawmaker decide. I mean, and I'm assuming that the intern is 20.
19.
19.
Yeah,
okay.
The story says 19.
All right. So there is nothing illegal about a grown man who is single asking someone out.
Right.
Now, I could make an argument that it's a little difficult for me to understand how a representative wouldn't understand how that's a really bad place to get a date.
Well, again, we have had that happen here, Matt. We've had this happen under Beth Harwell when she expelled Jeremy Durham. They vowed to up their game when it comes to instructions on what discrimination and harassment
because
is.
That's a subordinate. That is a dynamic that can just lead to any number of ethical issues, which obviously it did. But point being, even that is one thing. What this guy did, as reported by Williams and other news outlets, and now he's obviously resigned as a result, is just beyond the pale. I mean, it is vile, to say the least. And why someone could not look at the ethics violation report and immediately move on having, and think about this on the heels of the Bullhorn Trio, as I call them. They violated rules. And you immediately, and look, I don't blame you. I don't fault you. I was with you as long as you had a long game, which you didn't. But the leadership in the Tennessee House of Representatives immediately moved to expel these three because of a violation of the rules. And then this other jackhole is violating ethical rules, and you just sit on it.
You just sit on it.
You just sit. I mean, what was your reasoning for sitting on it? Now, we have asked the question that involved the word cover-up. And that has gotten a lot of attention already on the Florida House of Representatives.
Yes.
I might say. Our phones are blowing up. People asking questions.
Well, hey, I'll point this out while you're checking some of your messages here. News Channel 5. Now, again, Phil Williams broke the story. So, according to News Channel 5 and Phil Williams, I want to make sure that's attributed to them. I'm not saying it. They are. But we are asking the questions for sure. News Channel 5 has learned that potentially thousands of dollars have been spent to protect one victim, relocating her from the downtown apartment building where she and Campbell both had apartments, shipping her furniture back home in another part of the state, and placing her in a downtown hotel for the remainder of her internship.
Okay,
and legislators by the legislative offices have said we cannot tell you how much they've paid out, saying that information is confidential.
So I'm being told that it was reportedly, and I'm just passing on information that I'm getting about the decision-making process in all of this, that the Bipartisan Ethics Committee may have, I'm just reading, made the recommendation, but it was not from the speaker that she be moved. That they made the recommendation.
So?
Well, my question is, when was leadership aware of the totality of this situation? We believe it was March 29th. I'm looking at the memorandum. House of Representatives Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee, Nashville, Tennessee, memorandum, March 29th, 2. Honorable Cameron Sexton, Speaker of the House of Representatives, from the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee. I did not believe that the optics of the situation involving the Bullhorn Trio could get any worse, and it just has.
Hello. Welcome to Thursday.
Because the narrative that is about to break nationwide, let me just tell you, is that the Speaker of the House attempted to, I'm not saying it's correct, I'm not saying it's not correct. Cameron Sexton needs to defend himself on this. But the narrative is about to be that he attempted to cover this workplace harassment scandal up while attempting to remove 3 Democrats for a violation of the rules. When obviously the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee determined that this knucklehead violated the rules. Scotty Campbell.
Correct.
This is just flabbergasting. Is that a word? It is now. That all of this is going down at this time. So the General Assembly is winding down, in this fashion. You have one who has resigned. There are going to be a lot more questions regarding what Cameron Sexton knew, when he knew it, why he did not act on this sooner. And once again, attempting to give every bit of the benefit of the doubt that I possibly can to his office. If he was working the situation between March 29th and April 20th, then all he has to do is come on and let us know how that works.
And true, if the committee recommended that he move her out of the apartment and ship her furniture back and give her a hotel room until session is over. And as a 19-year-old, and if you're putting her in a nice hotel in downtown Nashville, that's actually, I would love that. But why is it that this legislator was able to keep his seat in the House for 20 some odd days? Why didn't you call for his resignation then? Maybe you did. I'd like to know. Or why didn't you boot his butt? Okay, if this was the recommendation, that's fine. But he still should have booted this guy out of there. Why was he protected? Were you just waiting to get this nightmare of a session over? I have lots of questions. And yes, we as taxpayers deserve to know how much did it cost to do all of this.
Well, and backing up, so I'm reading the memorandum from the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee. It says, pursuant to the Tennessee General Assembly Policy on Workplace Discrimination and Harassment and Rule 82 of the Permanent Rules of Order of the House of Representatives of the 111th General Assembly, the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee of the Ethics Committee convened on March 29, 2023 for the purpose of receiving a complaint made against Representative Scotty Campbell of Johnston County. Based on the completed staff investigation, the Ethics Subcommittee finds that Representative Campbell violated the policy. The Ethics Subcommittee is committed to protecting members, employees, and visitors by providing an environment free of discrimination, harassment, retaliation, et cetera, et cetera. In accordance with the policy and Rule 82, no further information concerning this complaint will be released. My question immediately is, what's the punishment for the violation of the ethics rule? And why was that punishment, why was it not made public at the time that this came out? Was the Speaker of the House sitting on it? And if so, why? I mean, I don't know that the punishment is automatic. I'm just trying to give every benefit of the doubt to Cameron that I possibly can, because what I want to do is unload on him. So what were your options in terms of punishment? What did you do in terms of punishment? If you did nothing, tell me why. If you did something, why was that not made public? Do the people not have a right to know? Especially when, because of this incident, regardless what the law says about it, we're going to find out what the law says about it, you're spending taxpayer dollars because of this knucklehead that you decided to keep in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something else, just from a female standpoint, if I may, and then I'll go do something else. But from a female standpoint, I am so sick to death of women being harassed and the harasser being protected, not the victim. I'm sick to death of that perception that I have right at this moment I hope and pray the speaker can change my mind. I hope and pray he can tell me he had no choice. I hope and pray. I mean, he could have told this guy, go home. Go home. Get out. You can't treat women this way. And this is a young 19-year-old. A young 19-year-old female who has come to this city to do her civic duty as an intern.
Now, I'm getting a little bit of conflicting information because what I'm hearing from News Channel 5 and Phil Williams, and say what you will about Phil, I believe that in my experience, Phil Williams leans left, but he also dots his I's and crosses his T's before he goes with the story, okay? And I'll give you it. There's a great example that just happened recently when some leftists had their knives out for Cameron Sexton on the issue of per diems and on the issue of mileage, and Phil Williams came to his defense and said he's violated no law. So Williams says that under the General Assembly's rules that the only thing that the ethics subcommittee can do is offer this letter to the Speaker of the House, and then they can't discuss it anymore publicly. They do all that they can do once they hand it off to the Speaker. So the question is, between then and now, what has the Speaker done with it? Now, I'm getting information on background that says that the Ethics Committee made the recommendation or may have made the recommendation that she be moved.
Well, it's not in that letter.
But it's not in that letter. And according to Phil Williams, and we'll do our own homework on it, that the rules of the General Assembly says that the Ethics Subcommittee offers the letter, and that's all they do.
They're done. Yeah, they won't be talking about it anymore.
So it sounds like somebody's passing the buck on the fact that this woman was moved from the apartment that she was in to a hotel as a result of sexual harassment against her. She was inconvenienced. The representative wasn't moved, to our knowledge, right?
Not to my knowledge.
And all of this started, well, we won't get into the more salacious details, but we'll tell you for those that are just joining in.
It's pretty salacious.
I mean, it's...
And, sorry, just to butt in here.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Interesting detail here in the story is, according to the victim's email to university officials, she was, quote, informed that Representative Campbell admitted fully to his guilt. When earlier in this story, it's clear that he was talking with Phil Williams, denying
he said
anything.
That he didn't do
So why
anything
was
wrong.
she informed of the exact opposite of that information?
I mean...
Because apparently, on the surface, Scotty Campbell wasn't expecting Phil Williams to come up to him and ask him about the story. For some reason, did he think this was just going to go away?
All right, so, Matt, just making sure I heard you correctly, that now Scotty Campbell is saying that he admitted fully what he did?
In this story, he denies it to Phil Williams in the interview, saying, are they lying? He says, quote, yes.
Okay.
And then later on in this story... the 19-year-old victim, I believe, according to victim's email to university officials, she was informed, quote, that Representative Campbell admitted fully to his guilt.
Well, somebody's lying, and I think it's probably Scotty Campbell. All right, more on this coming up in just a moment. Obviously, it's a breaking news story. We'll try to get comment from the Speaker's office, although somehow I doubt it. We do have several guests on the way. Aaron Goldbranson will break down some of the legislative activity. We wanted to talk to him about the best and worst of the legislative session as it winds down, and I think we just got the worst. I think
Indeed.
we just landed the worst. He's over there on a daily basis. Later on, from the Senate side of things, where there doesn't seem to be any action happening, Jack Johnson will join us. We were hoping, crossing our fingers, maybe for a visit with Governor Bill Lee, and I'm told maybe that's going to happen tomorrow, and that's still a maybe because his time is his time's being spent trying to speak with the legislative members in an attempt to get his order of protection bill passed that he so desperately wants to get passed before the end of the session. It's all breaking down as we speak on The Drive. No Brian Wilson. He's back on Monday. Matt Murphy in for Brian on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell has now resigned, and there's some pretty crude details as to why. And the White House criticizing Florida's, what critics say, the Don't Say Gay bill. We'll learn more about it 3:30 right here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's about a minute till that newscast with Mac Maury. Back in the newsroom. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. It is The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Shifting some things around. I mean, Pamela first fired up. I'm fired up. I hope you're fired up. We've got Aaron Goldbranson coming up in just a couple of minutes. I'm sure he's fired up about the legislative session as the legislative session winds down. So the latest news, if you're just joining us, we have a resignation. And no, I mean, how things have turned. Just several weeks ago, you and Matt Murphy and folks sitting on the fence post were talking about how strong of a leader Cameron Sexton was, in as much as he laid down the law with these rule breakers in the House of Representatives. And at the time, I said, well, yeah, I mean, that's all well and good, but do we have an end game here? Because I feel like they're going to be sashaying back into the body, conquering heroes in a couple of weeks, if I understand the law correctly. And, sadly, my prediction came true. That said, there was no end game. Now we're learning that in the midst of that, there was an ethics complaint filed with the ethics subcommittee, and they issued a report to Cameron Sexton indicating that one of the members of the body, a Republican, Scotty Campbell, was in violation of the ethics rules of the House of Representatives. And there's a number of questions here. My primary question is, what happened between March 29th and today, April 20th? What action was taken against Representative Scotty Campbell in that time? Why did it take a television reporter investigating this story and uncovering it to see Scotty Campbell resign? Could that resignation have not been facilitated sooner, and was that not the appropriate course of action? What options did the Speaker of the House have before him in order to punish Representative Scotty Campbell? Was public money used to move the intern from one place to another so as to protect her from a sexual harasser? And where does this leave Cameron Sexton in terms of his leadership? I asked the question earlier this week, or I made a statement earlier this week, and I laid it out for you in plain detail. Tennessee, we have a Cameron Sexton problem. Whether you support him or don't, we have a problem. And you have to decide whether you're ready to come to the man's defense in terms of his leadership, or if it's time to find better leadership. I'm not saying where I'm at on it. I'm saying you've got to figure out where you are on it. And this is just it's another needless scandal that did not have to be this way, and it changes the national and the state narrative considerably. It's 3:32. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.32, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 85 degrees right now in Nashville. That red flag warning for brush fire is still in effect until 7 p.m. Weather and traffic on the way. And this is the breaking story we've been covering for the last hour or so. Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell has resigned from the House after being found guilty of violating the Tennessee General Assembly policy on workplace discrimination and harassment. Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, learned of this situation on March 29th in a memorandum. The allegations detail that he made sexual advances towards two separate interns, one of which 19 years old. One of the victims was moved with potentially taxpayer money to a location that was away from Campbell during her internship downtown Nashville, to be specific. The 19-year-old claimed that Campbell asked her how many men that she had slept with, along with offering her cannabis gummies in return to see her tattoos and piercings and begging for hugs. Over to the nation's capital, the White House criticizing Florida for expanding what critics call the state's Don't Say Gay law to all public school grades. Andy Field has reaction from Washington.
Florida officially calls it the Parental Rights in Education Act. Critics call it the Don't Say Gay law, prohibiting public teachers from discussing LGBTQ issues in class, now expanded all the way to grade 12.
Under threat of having their licenses revoked, gay teachers have been forced to take down pictures of their spouses from their desks and censor their classroom materials.
Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre saying there should be no censorship in American education.
And as travel numbers keep going up, so do the number of guns found at airport security checkpoints. Here's Alex Stone.
From January 1st to March 31st, the TSA says it intercepted over 1,500 guns at airport security checkpoints in the U.S., averaging 17 a day, and more than 93% of them were loaded. That's a 10% increase over the first quarter of 2022. Bringing a gun in a carry-on to an airport checkpoint can mean a fine of $15,000. Many who get caught say they simply forget that they have a loaded gun in their carry-on bag that they brought to the airport.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
340 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Gabrielle Hansen will be with us at 4:35 today. Gabrielle is an alderwoman for Williamson County, lives down in Franklin. We'll talk to her about the decision on the part of, well, really the mayor, because he broke the tie on the part of the alder people in order to bring in a gay pride parade. We'll talk to Gabrielle about that, amongst other things, at 4:35. Jack Johnson in the 5 o'clock hour this afternoon. Right now, it is our pleasure to welcome from the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition, Aaron Goldbranson, to talk about legislative activities. Good afternoon, Aaron.
How are you, sir?
I'm great. I hope you are.
I am wonderful.
It's
I'm
just
a little fired up as well. I know you were saying that you were before, but yeah.
You know, when you and I were first getting to know one another, it was around last year's legislative session, just before you went to the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition. And I don't know if I asked this question this directly, but I know that I presented the sentiment over cigars. Man, the Tennessee legislature is kind of boring. That was last year.
Yeah,
now,
you did say that last year.
And now this year is this year.
So what we're about to say is we both miss boring.
Well, when it's this kind of nonsense, I mean, talk to me about, the latest revelation. I mean, we don't know any more except that you had an individual in the House of Representatives who was obviously harassing someone. The Ethics Committee found that he was. He's now resigned. And what would your questions be at this point?
Well, there's the usual, what did you know, when did you know it, that sort of thing. There is the, did you consider that this might come out while you were doing other actions, i.e. removal of other members. There's 1,000 questions that I'd really like to ask, probably a little more colorful than those that I just won't ask on the air. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where you could accurately say that, at least from a messaging standpoint, there are a number of things that have made people look like they're just stepping on each other's shoes, and they're certain members of leadership are getting in their own way.
It's my understanding that the Ethics Committee doesn't make decisions as to what to do about their findings. It's my understanding, and I'm leaning a little bit on Phil Williams from over at News Channel 5 on that front.
Heaven forbid.
Well, I mean, right. I mean, look, I've long said, obviously, Will leans way left of center, but I will say this. It has been my experience in Tennessee that when the man publishes something, he has crossed all of his T's and dotted his. I don't know if he has or not. But point being this. Why did you make the decision to spend taxpayer money to move an intern and then place her in a hotel for the duration of her internship as opposed to removing the representative?
It's a very good question. And of course, when you're talking about taxpayer money, that makes it a bigger sin, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing when you're talking about, in reality, who wasted taxpayer money in the removals. It was, the Memphis Council and the Metro Council that brought them back. When you're talking about moving an intern around and everything going on with that, you're wasting money. And so it's honestly probably, and all of these are snap reactions by me, but a little more serious just to put it lightly, right?
Well, and if you're wondering whether we're making a little more of this than we should, based on the fact that Scotty Campbell is all ready to resign, I would just encourage you. I'm not going to repeat it during an afternoon time slot where there might be kids in the car. But just know this. This was not a dude asking a woman out on a date. This was not an older guy asking a younger person if she would be interested in relations. It goes much, much deeper than that. And one would presume that Cameron Sexton in leadership understood that. And there's just a lot of questions, and they remain to be answered. And hopefully Cameron will be willing, once he's done with his business over in the House, because it's my understanding they're currently in session, he'll come on with us and he'll answer some of those questions.
Well, and of course, you've got to go back a few weeks, when we discussed on this exact show, actually we had the vote on the television when you and I were sitting here last, and it seems like a lot of the things that have come out, and then a lot of the legislative proposals that have come out, have lacked any sort of artful timing. You have a few different red flag law proposals that have come out from a couple of members of the Tennessee General Assembly, as well as the governors, which one could very kindly say have at least been ill-advised on the timing. Now, from my perspective, I'm 1,000 and times infinity against any sort of red flag law. And I believe the Second Amendment is sacrosanct. And then, of course, then you have something like this pop up, and it's just all terrible optics all around, terrible function all around. As an aside, I do want to say, I mean, and this is and I've said this before in other venues, but my professional assessment from talking to the General Assembly is that the reason we're not going to see a red flag law passed is you can credit, among some others, because it is a team effort, you can credit House Majority Leader William Lamberth, a lot of members of his caucus too, and Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, and in addition to him, Senator John Stevens. And there's a reason why we gave awards out the other day, and that's one of them. We know what was... I worked very, very hard to figure out what's really going to happen in the General Assembly, right?
Jack's coming on later on in the show, and I will obviously ask him about this because we've not been able to sit down, although he has robustly defended the comments that he made that were being taped in his office. I think I understand what he meant by them. I'm not here to defend the guy. He can defend himself.
Right.
But I think he was correctly noting that if you call something in the state of Tennessee a red flag law, what we understand and know about red flag laws is going to make it a non-starter at the time that you call it that. Now, if you want to present something different, you better be able to frame it differently so as to get it passed, if that's your desire.
Listen, and I'll put it this way, and I heard those very badly taken out of context because, when you have heck, you and I sitting having a cigar could have something very easily taken out of context if you snip out, 30 seconds versus 45 minutes. But that's an analysis that Donald Trump could have made, Ron DeSantis could have made, Rush Limbaugh.
It's a political reality.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah. So my take on red flag laws are simple. They don't work.
Yeah.
19 states have them. I've seen no data that suggest that in any way do they work. That is not my opinion. That is statistical fact. They're not enforced. They're easily gotten around. They're rarely used. They're abused, and they're not understood.
Right.
So why would we try something that has yet to work in any other state where it's been tried and in a way violate individuals' Second Amendment rights in a preemptive fashion before they commit any sort of crime against them, other people?
Well, the old adage is if you're going to do something again and again and expect a different result, that is the very definition of insanity. So these proposals are the very definition of insanity. And they're not going to go in, they're not going to pass.
And that's true. And I understand the governor's office is leaning very hard on the legislature to do something. And look, I said yesterday, and I'll say again, I don't begrudge the governor trying to figure out the things that he could do. If he can find a wiggly way to not violate the Second Amendment, but also to try to identify, we're all for that. But the trick is not violating our basic God-given rights written down in the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah, and there may be a very, 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 very narrow way to work on mental health issues, but again, it's not the fault of. I mean, you don't take away the Second Amendment in order to achieve a short-term political end, right? I mean, and that's really what we're talking about. I mean, it's a lot of people look at the proposal and go, well, there's pressure because of what happened at Covenant, and that was a sad tragedy. And Lord forbid, I will never be governor. But if I were governor, my response would have been to actually lean into and say something a lot of other people have been saying. And I don't know if he has said this or not. And I mean, forgive me if he has. But like, how dare the left use the lives of the 3 children and the 3 adults that were murdered that day to try to do a big gun grab? That is the overall leadership message we should be hearing from everybody in the General Assembly, and we're hearing it from a lot of them, but everybody in government, everybody that has common sense here. And then you have Justin Jones with his ridiculous casket thing, which I could also think of, well, okay, you're using it on this issue, but you're going to toss that casket in the river the second somebody talks about abortion or. Well,
and why doesn't Justin Jones make it his personal goal to eliminate all guns from District 52?
Yeah.
I mean, I am certain that Justin Jones, with his newfound popularity, could start a GoFundMe page to raise millions and millions of dollars. I mean, hell, he's going to be at the White House. I bet he can get some federal money for a gun buyback program and get everybody in District 52 to sell their guns back to him and show us what a utopia truly could look like.
Well, hey, Justin Jones, if you're listening, we'll dare you. I'll speak for myself. Maybe you want to join
I'll do it.
But why don't you take all that money you've now raised on the backs of your politicization of the deaths of people and do that? Go institute your own personal buyback program in your district and see what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe the president of the United States,
because,
Joe Biden, can help you too.
By the way, I don't know if we've noticed, but Justin Jones and Justin Pearson and Gloria Johnson collectively represent some of the most crime-ridden areas in the entire state.
Right.
So maybe if they would heal yourself, doctors, the old saying, maybe if you look in your own backyard, fix those sorts of issues, maybe you can apply those to the rest of the state of Tennessee.
And of course, Justin Jones himself has, back in 2020 and other times, helped participate in the crime rates, right?
351, Aaron Gold-Branson with us for at least another segment, maybe even longer. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. That music means we are out of time for this hour. Aaron will join us in the next hour to talk about successes and misses in the legislative session and to continue to talk about the governor's push for an order of protection. Also in the next hour, Gabrielle Hansen with Williamson County, and she's an alderwoman with Williamson County. We'll talk with her as well. Plus, you on the phone, 615-737-9986. It is The Drive. Brian Wilson back on Monday. Matt Murphy in for Brian on Super Talk.
Four o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. That red flag warning still in effect in the mid-state. That's until 7 p.m. for brush fires. Currently 85 degrees and sunny in Tennessee. Wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour throughout the day. Complete weather and traffic report in about 5 minutes. A Tennessee representative, Scotty Campbell, has been found guilty of violating the workplace discrimination and harassment policy of the Tennessee GA, and Campbell has now resigned. The Ethics Committee is barred from speaking further on the matter other than the memorandum they sent to the House Speaker, Cameron Sexton, on March 29th. Channel 5's Phil Williams reported that Campbell made sexual advances towards 2 interns, causing them to report his actions. One of the interns was moved to a different apartment in downtown Nashville, further away from Campbell after reporting them. That happened during her internship, possibly with taxpayer money. The second intern, 19 years of age, was not known until Campbell openly admitted that there were 2 instances being investigated to Williams of Channel 5. The details are crude and salacious, including one of the victims saying that Campbell reached out and grabbed her around the neck after her denying to hug him several times. The president rejecting the House Republican plan for raising the debt ceiling because it cuts or freezes what he says is critical spending. Andy Field has more on the standoff from Washington.
The president says the argument is simple. Democrats did not demand conditions to raise the debt ceiling under President Trump. He won't let Republicans do it while he's in charge.
We should not have to negotiate on this. We should not be doing this with conditions.
Spokesperson Corinne Jean-Pierre says the Republican debt ceiling plan would involve massive spending cuts, block student loan relief, repeal green energy plans, and take back billions for IRS enforcement.
Republicans have consistently denied those claims. A federal lawsuit being filed against the police department in the San Francisco Bay Area city of Antioch over claims that the police department has been run by racism and homophobia. Alex Stone.
Around 40% of the police department in Antioch has been caught up in a growing scandal of shockingly racist and homophobic text messages sent between officers, some while out with suspects or while at Black Lives Matter protests. Around 45 officers have been implicated after the FBI and prosecutors released some of the text messages. Civil rights attorney John Burris now filing a federal lawsuit on behalf of people he says were unfairly arrested or beaten by Antioch police.
It was more than just locker room talk. It was a state of mind.
There are also calls for the Department of Justice to investigate.
And a crime story here in Tennessee. News 2 says that 19-year-old Anthony Barksdale allegedly stole an AR-15 and fired shots at a Murfreesboro apartment complex. The man Barksdale reportedly stole that gun from tried to get it back, but that's when Barksdale started firing. Barksdale's been taken into custody and charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault, 2 of which reckless. He's being held currently on a $50,000 bond and is due in court in June. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hour number 2 of The Drive. No Brian Wilson. Matt Murphy in for Brian today and tomorrow. Brian back on Monday. It's 4:07 on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. It is an absolutely jam-packed news day. Mac Morey's busy in the newsroom. Mason is busy behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. And I'm busy here in the studios as well of Supertalk 99.7 WTN. A little update on our lineup. Aaron Goldbranson is with us right now from the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition. In about 20 minutes, we will have Gabrielle Hansen. Gabrielle Hansen is with Williamson County. She's an alderwoman in Williamson County. They recently had a vote on a gay pride parade. That eventually passed, thank you to the mayor of Franklin. We'll talk to her about that, amongst other things, including some comments that she made a couple of days ago regarding the Covenant School and some particular knowledge that she claims to have about motivations within that Covenant School shooting. Considering that we've not seen a manifesto, as they're calling it, as of yet, and there are questions as to why that is, I think it's a very appropriate conversation to have in about 20 minutes. Meanwhile, the shooting in Louisville, there was a 13-page or so written document, manifesto, call it what you will, from that shooter. That's been released by Daily Mail. We've got that on the docket today. Jack Johnson around 6 o'clock this afternoon, and I just shuffle some of that around. He's Senate Majority Leader because at 5:35 today, Cameron Sexton, the Speaker of the House, will be on the drive on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. Now, considering the breaking news that's happened, and if you're just in your car, let me catch you up. One of the members of the Republican caucus, Scotty Campbell, has resigned his position as a House of Representatives member. This is due to a workplace discrimination and harassment subcommittee decision that Scotty Campbell was in violation of the workplace discrimination and harassment ethics as laid out by the Tennessee General Assembly policy, as well as the House of Representatives rules itself. Representative Scotty Campbell was found to be in violation after receiving a complaint on March 29th, and it was not until this information was made public that he made the decision to resign his post. We'll find out from the Speaker of the House his involvement on all of this, and I will put the pointed question to you, Aaron Goldbranson. What would you, had you the ability, ask of the Speaker of the House regarding that matter?
I would ask this to his face, and I'm happy to ask it now, which is, have you considered on the last several weeks of what the optics are and what the strategy is with all these intersecting issues that you're having? And has the response from leadership, been appropriate? I'd love to hear what he said.
I understand, and I don't want to get in front of our interview today at 5:35. I fully understand that one doesn't have anything to do with the other. But I also understand how you can put two and two together and recognize that the Speaker was very, very quick to initiate proceedings and to receive resolutions regarding the expulsion of these three. And to our knowledge, there was kind of lack of movement between March and today on this other. Now, maybe we're wrong. We'll find out at 5:35.
And maybe I'm tooting my own here. One of the reasons I'm good at my job is I realize that everything inevitably intersects. And it may not technically have anything to do with the other, but you've got to realize what the optics are, and you've got to consider everything. You're the really good chess players in the world. They don't look at the next move; they look 10, 15 moves down the line, and they don't sacrifice the long term for the short term and that sort of thing. And that's something that's very important to maintain. Anybody who analyzes politics needs to kind of keep that at the forefront of their mind. And so when you're governing your actions and your messaging and all that sort of thing, it's a very good thing to have at the top of your mind.
Well, the obvious question is, did one have to do with the other in regard to the number of votes you needed to expel three members from the Democrat caucus for their actions?
That's a good question.
Now, I don't disagree with Cameron Sexton that if this was not worthy of expulsion, what would be? You took over the well, you disrupted the rules, you knew the rules, you attempted to convince we know all of this.
Yeah.
Question being, and I don't expect that Cameron would accept this premise, but I'll ask it anyway. Was it a consideration that you needed Scotty Campbell's vote in the expulsion proceedings as to why you did not move forward on the decision as to what to do regarding the unethical behavior of one of your members?
Right. And again, hindsight is 20/20. And I have no earthly real idea what all of the conversations that occurred on that subject and the other. But I mean, I'm not going to shy away. I supported the removal of the Justins and Gloria Johnson. And but I would say, I mean, if I had been aware of this at the time, heck, that would have been a really good expulsion hearing. You have the three of them expelled for what they did, and then you expel Scotty Campbell in that particular. And as an aside, what's kind of interesting,
you actually bring up a good point. If you want to dispel what I consider to be the false narrative that they're doing all of this because they want to go after three Democrats, specifically two outspoken young African-American Democrats, well, then get the Republican up there too. Let's handle it all in one night.
Yeah.
And you dispel that this is some sort of partisan attack at that point. We're just going to rid the body of unethical or unruly behavior like that.
I mean, you could have made the argument that the three Marxist leftists poisoned the body in their own way, and then due to these actions that have come out by Scotty Campbell, he's poisoned the body in that way, and we're going to get rid of them all at once.
Outside of this, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the play? So, outside of this, what good has come out of the legislative session this year?
Well, that's the funny thing is, I mean, there's been so many substantive things that have happened. Of course, there's a lot of we've talked a lot about the anti-child mutilation bill that Leader Johnson and Leader Lambert put in at the very beginning of session. There's a bill that actually by State Senator Dawn White that the governor just signed on Monday that banned taxpayer dollars going to abortions, which of course is relevant in this day and age because Nashville Metro Council and the mayor's office had been discussing, ways to get people to other states. There's been, you have the adult cabaret ban, which of course is being litigated. But you also have, and, since we're talking Nashville, and there's litigation on this too, but shrinking the size of Metro Council. My hope with that legislation was to see maybe a more moderate council instead of the far left boondoggle it is. You've got many things like that. You have, we gave State Senator Dawn White an award as well for her. She had another bill that she had signed into law that causes the Secretary of State to work with small and large businesses in the state. And it's a voluntary participation by the businesses, but to fight child and human trafficking. There's all sorts of legislation that have been really, really good, and those are just a few that are substantive and have done really good work. And then there are the things that even though they're flashy and where people are yelling and screaming about that while there's discussion about them, they're not going to happen. There's always
the fact that and you and I discussed it last hour, I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but the fact that cooler heads are prevailing on the concept of a red flag law. I know the governor doesn't want to call it that, and look, I understand the governor is going to do what the governor is going to do. He has his opinion on this. Yeah. He is not going to face the voters again of the state of Tennessee. But if our listening audience and what I'm seeing from around the state is any indication, they understand the ineffective nature of red flag laws. They understand the danger of the creep against the Second Amendment. And while they want to do everything in our power to identify mentally ill people and do what we can to get them the help that they need, they're not going to do that at the sacrifice of their ability to keep and bear arms.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think it's actually a darn shame the end of the session has turned into and that's what we're going to remember rather than, the first, most of it where the substantive work was being done.
I'm not going to take credit for this, although I'm the one that's going to say it on a 100,000-watt radio station. But you inspired this comment, Aaron Gilbranson.
All right. I'm afraid now.
How interesting is it that there is far more conversation going on right now about the resignation of the Speaker of the House than there is about the resignation of the Lieutenant Governor? Think about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
When it was all about that. I mean, can we go back to fire emojis, please? Can we have a little more, heart emojis and fire emojis and get rid of this nonsense?
It's ironic. It certainly is ironic that what all this business is in politics, right?
I'm going to say this specifically in this way just for you. Does the tranny bill do anything for you? And by tranny, I mean the transportation bill, you dirty-minded person, not the other one. I mean,
That's half your audience right now.
I mean, I dig it. I mean, if we're going to spend money, I would prefer a private-public partnership. I mean, the devil's always in the details, but...
Well, one of the few without actually, I'll give you a vague answer on part of it. One of the few actual constitutional functions of government is roads and transportation, right? The advice that I have given every member of the General Assembly I've talked to about this, and as well as members of the governor's administration, having driven through Northern Virginia and D.C., for the love of all that is good and holy, whatever happens with these choice lanes, or whatever you want to call them, toll lanes, choice lanes, I don't really care. It's semantical, right? But do not let them be a floating fee. If somebody drives and it's $5 in the morning and it goes to $35 2 hours later, that's the quickest way to get anybody who voted for it thrown out. You know what I mean? I've done these things. I've paid this money. I've been on the Sun Pass lane, and I've been in the Peach Pass lane over in Georgia. What is a float? It means the amount that you pay changes based on the time of day? So in the Northern Virginia area, it's exactly right. In Northern Virginia and D.C., they call them HOV lanes, and they're designed to ostensibly do the same thing as they're supposed to do here, which is lighten traffic, which everyone loves to lighten traffic. Now, D.C. is a whole nother level of traffic compared to Nashville, I assure you. But yeah, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, when they administered it and they opened it up and I honestly, it's been years since I've done this, so it may still exist that way, but you literally had times where it floated based on congestion. So you'd have a $5 fee in the morning and a $35 fee in the middle of the day or something and it was just insane and crazy. And there was more road rage over that than probably anything else, which is saying something for Northern Virginia and D.C.
Will anything else come out of the session that's not yet passed?
I think we're kind of at the point with, you got the budget. You've got a what I would refer to as more technical housekeeping bills going on. I don't necessarily see, and of course we can discuss it in a few weeks, but I don't necessarily see anything, groundbreaking happening now. I think a lot of that's already happened. They came out the gate on the culture war stuff, which was good. And it's been a lot more mundane things that are passing rather than being discussed necessarily.
I mean, maybe I can find. I just discovered, Aaron, a little itty teeny tiny sliver of a silver lining around this dark cloud that has been Gloria and the two Justins, and it is this. Walk with me here now. I know it's a little bit of a stretch. Okay. If you are of the mindset that the less they do on Capitol Hill, the better, then this shut down the session without them doing anything more, because it seemed to me that the supermajority, once all of this shook out the way that it did, they're ready to run for the hills.
Right.
And so no more damage done in the session, at least as far as I can see.
Right. I mean, there's always a possibility there may be some damage done.
Well, and there is, I've heard a rumor that, and I haven't substantiated this in any way, that Governor Bill Lee might be willing to call a special session if he can wrangle enough votes to do something about mental illness and guns in the state of Tennessee. Now, I think that's a fool's errand, but I've heard it.
I don't know why you'd need it. Well, let me put it this way to go back to your previous thing. If you didn't call a special session to help the people in the military and the Tennessee National Guard that were getting fired over the COVID vaccine mandate, you sure as heck shouldn't call it over this.
Aaron, always good conversation with the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
There's Aaron Gulbranson on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WT, and it's 421. Stand by.
A Tennessee representative allegedly made sexual advances towards 2 interns and is now resigned from their duty. And the money news, we take a look at Wall Street. That and more, all coming up 30 minutes after the hour right here. Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mac Morey. It is 4:26. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The drive continues. Brian Wilson back on Monday. Matt Murphy normally from noon until 3. Today, tomorrow from 3 until 7. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for being here as well. So the General Assembly is winding down. We do not anticipate an order of protection law. I'm told by many in the body that it is DOA. We did not see a sales tax-free gun safe bill this session. We will ask Jack Johnson about that because members of the House of Representatives blame the Senate for not fully funding it. Also, the rape backlog kit bill died, which, if we have the money to afford this, would seem to me to also be a no-brainer. We will discuss those matters with both Cameron Sexton and Jack Johnson on today's show. Cameron Sexton coming on at 5:35. Jack just after that, about 6:05 this evening, as the session winds down. We're told that the Senate is expected to meet tomorrow, and then they're done. But I have no confirmation on that. Perhaps Jack does. That's coming up a little bit later on. Hunter Biden has been under federal investigation since 2018. Let me look at this national news while we have a couple of minutes to do so. The federal investigation into his, quote, tax affairs began amid discovery of funding from China and other foreign nations or foreign nationals. The White House is now commenting and dismissing allegations from a whistleblower who claims that the Biden administration has mishandled the federal investigation into Hunter Biden and has interfered with the Department of Justice. That President Biden has upheld, they're saying, his commitment to ensure the investigation is free from any political interference, which is a load of hogwash. White House spokesperson Ian Sams told Fox News, quote, since he took office and consistent with his campaign promise that he would restore the independence of the Justice Department when it comes to decision-making in criminal investigations, President Biden has made clear that this matter would be handled independently by the Justice Department under the leadership of a U.S. attorney appointed by former President Donald Trump. Free from any interference with the White House. So here's the story as it stands today. A White House criminal supervisor, an agent, is attempting to seek whistleblower protection from the Republican-led House of Representatives, saying that investigations into Hunter Biden were being mishandled intentionally by the Biden administration. The whistleblower is claiming, quote, clear, underline, clear, conflict of interest, including by giving the president's son preferential treatment, saying that politics are improperly infecting decisions and protocols that would normally be followed by career law enforcement professionals in similar circumstances if the subject were not politically connected. In other words, this is a witness to the facts that we already believe in our souls and our hearts to be true. That Hunter Biden is not being properly investigated because of Joe Biden's, not only his influence as president, but also his possible connection to all of this. Friends, this could be the largest scandal in American history. Now, I say could be. I believe it already is. You have a president of the United States that's compromised by Ukraine and his decision-making in that country as vice president, withholding money if they do not change the board of Burisma and move a prosecutor off of his post. Well, Hunter Biden was a part of the board of Burisma, and Joe Biden was demanding that a prosecutor get fired, the same prosecutor that was going after Burisma and might potentially uncover the financial entanglement that Hunter Biden had, along with Joe Biden and his brother, with that country. Not to mention the entanglements that Hunter Biden reportedly has with China and some of the kickback money that Joe Biden has received from those said entanglements. Now we have a witness that's willing to testify that he's receiving preferential treatment. What is he willing to say? And will the media continue to ignore it? All valid questions. We'll continue watching on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 4:30 news time. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson on the drive.
31 minutes now after the hour, 4 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 84 degrees, a sunny day in Nashville. Weather and traffic headed your way in just a few minutes. Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell has resigned from the House after being found guilty of violating the Tennessee General Assembly policy on workplace discrimination and harassment. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton learned of this situation on March 29th in a memorandum. The allegations were reported by Channel 5's Phil Williams. They detail that he made sexual advances towards two separate interns, one of which is 19 years old. One of the victims was moved with potentially taxpayer money to a location away from Campbell during her internship. The 19-year-old claimed that Campbell asked her how many men that she had slept with, along with offering her cannabis gummies in return to see her tattoos and piercings and begging for hugs. After repeatedly denying all of that, Campbell reportedly grabbed around her neck. One of the victims was told by university officials that Campbell admitted to being fully guilty to all of these actions, but when talking to Phil Williams of News Channel 5, Campbell claimed that both were lying and denied any of the wrongdoing. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton will be joining the drive on WTN at 5:35 today to discuss this breaking story. Over to the Money News, Daria Albinger.
From ABC News, Wall Street now, a Thursday slide for the markets. The Dow fell 110 points, and Nasdaq gave up 98. The S&P closed down 25. Stocks were pulled lower by big losses for Tesla and AT&T, and more signals that the economy may be slowing. Amazon's asking Virginia for nearly $153 million in state incentive payments. They'd be the first funds to be paid out after the tech giant agreed in 2018 to build a headquarters complex in the state. Twitter says this time it's for real. Many high-profile users have lost the blue check marks, which helped verify their identity and distinguish them from imposters on the Elon Musk-owned social media platform. After several false starts, the site is now making good on its promise to remove the blue checks from accounts which don't pay a monthly fee to keep them. Twitter had about 300,000 verified users under the original blue check, many of them journalists, athletes, and public figures.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather are on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Here we are. Here we go. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson this afternoon. Normally here from noon until 3. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'll be here tomorrow as well. 4:38. Man, lots going on. Don't forget, 5:30 this afternoon, Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton will be on with us to talk about the resignation of Scotty Campbell as well as the conclusion of the General Assembly for this legislative session. We will have Jack Johnson on soon after. In the 6 o'clock hour, he's Senate Majority Leader. It's my understanding the Senate's ready to wind it down by tomorrow. We'll discuss with both of those gentlemen some of the activities happening as we speak in the General Assembly. Right now, we turn our attention to Franklin. I noted that recently Franklin made the decision to allow for the permitting of a gay pride event in that city. It was a robust discussion that eventually led to a tie vote on the part of the aldermen. And that vote was broken, that tie was broken by the mayor of Franklin. We are joined by Gabrielle Hansen, who is alderman at large in the city of Franklin, to talk about these and other matters. Gabrielle, thank you for being on with us. Good afternoon.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Tell us a little about why this discussion came to this vote in this way. It's my understanding, and I'm relatively new to the area, but it's my understanding that this gay pride event was held last year and got a little out of control. Is that correct?
It was held 2 years previous, and last year we had more eyes on it than usual since people were getting out post-COVID, and we had inappropriate activities and behavior in our public park, Harlan Sale Farm.
And I understand that you were a no vote on allowing the permitting this time around. Give us your reasoning and talk to us about how all that shook out and what the mayor's reason for allowing the permit to go forward was.
I was a no vote based on behavior and the failure to apologize or take corrective action on their own behalf. Shortly after their event, they were called in by the city to be debriefed, and they had the explanation that the public was very upset with the partial nude performances, children tipping, drag queens, other inappropriate behavior at the event. And they said, well, you know, that's what goes on at a pride event. Sorry, not sorry. And they sent all of the aldermen and the staff a glowing letter and a report of their post-event meeting and how proud they were of their event. Fast forward a year, they were still claiming there was nothing objectionable. It was completely family-friendly, and that was something you would see every day.
And I imagine that you don't believe that. I mean, well, let me ask it this way. I saw where the mayor of Franklin indicated that you would be watching very, very closely. What, if anything, are you prepared to do should these activities get out of hand this year?
What should we be prepared to do is ask people to leave as needed, and the police would enforce this. Shut down the event if it got completely out of hand and there were significant issues, or post-event, the mayor and the staff and the board of mayor and aldermen could agree that they need to take either permanent revocation of the ability to have their event or some sort of multiple-year censure. Do I think that the mayor will end up doing anything? I don't. I absolutely don't, and I am sure, given the height of publicity that this has had, that we are going to have a lot of attendees coming for shock value.
I would imagine so. Well, hopefully law and order will prevail, and hopefully the city of Franklin, if they mind their manners, I mean, that's one thing, but sadly, you know, we don't anticipate that might be the case, but hopefully everything works out in that regard for the city of Franklin.
I'd love to see them be successful and show us that they really can do a family-friendly event this year.
I certainly hope so as well. You know, Gabrielle, I became aware of you as an alderman thanks to the Mill Creek View podcast hosted by Steve Abramowitz. And I listened to the podcast that you did a couple of days ago, and I want to share one piece of conversation, which is an unrelated topic to the Gay Pride Parade in Franklin, but I want to share a piece of the conversation that you had with Steve on that podcast and then ask you about it. So here's Gabrielle appearing on a podcast from a couple of days ago with Steve Abramowitz. Go. Come on. Let me know. Here it comes. Before you know it.
A memorial was held in Franklin's Monticello neighborhood on March 30th to honor the life of Cindy Peak, a victim of the March 27th shooting at the Covenant School in Green Hills that made national news, of course. Peak was a Franklin resident and educator who was working as a substitute teacher at the school. The community gathered to remember her and honored her with a community walk around the neighborhood. How do you feel about the entire Covenant School issue? And obviously it had its ripple effects everywhere in the state, including Franklin, which I just told you Cindy Peak was here. What are your thoughts on it?
I have a whole different twist on that. The Wednesday before that shooting was when the police came to my house to register the reports for the phone calls and the death threat. And I looked at that officer and I said, I'm telling you right now, I have zero basis for what I'm about to tell you other than my gut. Nobody's tipped me off. Nobody said anything, but my gut is telling me there's going to be an active shooter. I felt it. I just felt it. Don't ask me how. It could be a Holy Spirit thing, but I felt an active shooter coming. So when that happened on Monday, I was not surprised. So from contacts that I have directly in Nashville, within 30 minutes of that shooting, I had the whole story. I know what happened. There was no threat to anyone else. It was a love triangle going on with an individual that worked at that school related to the principal who was getting counseling from the pastor, and the person they were having the love triangle with was just about to get married, and they were trying to pry this Audrey Hale off of the relationship with this other female that was getting married and who might now be married, I don't know, but they had a couple of transgenders in the wedding party. It was the principal's daughter. So Audrey went with the intent to kill the pastor's daughter, had to take out 2 children to get to the daughter, accidentally shot the janitor, and had to kill Cynthia Peak because she was in there with the principal.
All right, so Gabrielle, that's just an incredibly explosive story that you told 2 nights ago on Steve Abramowitz's podcast. Let me start here. Do you stand by that?
Oh, I do stand by it. Absolutely, I do. And furthermore, if that got out, it wouldn't help the gun control narrative either. Gun control narrative aside, let's talk about a couple of the details that are inaccurate. The contact that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Who was that? I don't share any contact.
Why wouldn't you?
Because people tell me things in confidence, and I don't divulge what other people tell me.
Well, the person that told you what you just related to Steve told you something that is full of inaccuracies. Are you aware of that?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's, well, if you want to listen to the media narrative, it's one thing, but if you want to know what
I'm listening.
happened,
I'm listening to people who were on the scene and who toured the facility in the aftermath. You stated that Cynthia Peak died with Catherine Kuntz, right?
In the general vicinity.
That is incorrect, ma'am.
Okay,
it is absolutely a fact that it is incorrect.
Okay, well, there's a lot of facts that are out there that aren't quite factual. Because that's the way the media sends things.
That's my issue with you, because you're presenting things that are in fact completely devoid of reality.
No, I will stand by my story.
Well, you can stand by your story all you want. Your story is completely inaccurate, and
you can have your own opinion. But
no, ma'am, I don't have an opinion. I've spoken to people who've toured the scene. Have you?
No, I didn't.
There are people dead, and you're spreading gossip and rumors that are lies.
No, I think it's horrible that somebody
died. It is not, ma'am. It is not a fact that Pastor Scruggs was counseling the shooter. It is not a fact. That was a rumor that came out that was immediately dispelled by the school and all of the participants.
Well, people can believe whatever they want to, and there was no threat to anyone else from this shooting. That I know to be a fact.
Regardless of this, why are you spreading scurrilous gossip and innuendo without backing it up with factual information? Tell me who told you this information 30 minutes after it happened.
No, I'm not going to share it.
Why wouldn't you share that to back up your story?
Because I don't need to share that.
Ma'am, you are a member of the Franklin community in good standing. You're an alderman, and you're spreading. Ma'am, you are spreading lies.
No, I'm not spreading lies.
It is a lie, ma'am. It is a lie that Cynthia Peak died with Catherine Kuntz. They were in separate parts of the building.
Well, okay, you can say whatever you want to, and you're the media, and you're welcome to. And I know what my source is, and I know my source is very accurate.
That gave you this information 30 minutes after the shooting happened?
Yes.
Did you call them, or did they call you?
I don't even remember who called who first.
You don't remember who called who?
No, I don't. I get a lot of phone calls, especially about that time.
Uh-huh. So someone, or you called someone, or someone called you, and they said, "Ooh, did you hear about this? I know exactly what happened." 30 minutes after the shooting occurred.
This person is very
before the woman was identified, ma'am. You're claiming that you had the information.
Trust me, I had a very credible source.
No, I'm not going to trust you. I'm going to ask you again to tell me how you knew the full story before the shooter had been identified.
Well, maybe that's why Melissa Joan Hart was there. She must have known it was going to happen also.
And how would she have known? So you're saying that some wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Quickly?
So are you saying that that individuals in the community had a prior knowledge that this shooting was going to occur before it happened? Is that your statement?
How did Melissa Joan Hart get there?
I'm asking you, are you stating that someone had prior knowledge that the Covenant School was going to be attacked? And if so, have you spoken to authorities and told the authorities who had that prior knowledge?
I wouldn't have any clue if anybody knew. I don't even know Melissa Joan Hart. But I know she was present almost immediately thereafter, as well as another woman.
She was driving down the road, man.
Shooting site very quickly thereafter.
You stated that Mike Hill was, quote, accidentally shot. Are you aware of the order in which this happened?
Yeah, watch the video.
And what did you glean from the video, although you already knew the full story? But who was shot first in this instance?
I watched the video.
Who was shot first, ma'am?
I'm not here. I'm not part of that incident. Thank you.
You claimed, you repeated on a podcast publicly that you had the full knowledge of what went down that day at the Covenant School. I think it is an attack on that school. It is an attack on this community. It is a dastardly shame that you are allowed to continue as an alderperson when you are spreading lies and innuendo about what happened that day.
Way as a media host, and you're looking for ratings.
I'm looking for nothing but the truth, ma'am. I want to know who you claim told you this information 30 minutes after the shooting happened.
Someone that had accurate information.
Who would that be, ma'am? Someone in law enforcement?
I don't give my sources. I'm so sorry.
You don't give your sources?
I'm not part of this.
Well, I hope that you are. I hope that the Metro Nashville Police Department contacts you so they can get this very valuable. Why have you not been in contact with the police department if you believe this information to be true?
Has all they need. I assure you, they're very competent.
Well, you get your facts wrong. You get basic information about the case wrong. You spread scurrilous lies about people that died that day.
No, I have not spoken about any of them that died individually, or trust me.
Ma'am, you said that you said we just listened to you. You said that Haley Scruggs was targeted because Pastor Scruggs was counseling the shooter. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. That is a lie.
Well, I don't know where you got your information, but I do know where I got mine. And anybody is allowed to have any opinion they want based on the information they got it. and media is not always the most accurate source of information.
Well, I would love for you to tell me what your I would
media.
love for you to tell me what your accurate source of information is while you drag people through the mud with what you claim to know.
Time will tell, but I am telling you, I am sure of my information.
You are sure of your you stand by your story.
I do stand by my story.
Outside the fact that I just factually demonstrated that parts of your story are inaccurate.
Were you there?
No, but I talked to people who were, ma'am.
Great, and I did too.
We'll let the audience decide. I don't know how you.
The video doesn't quite match with many things.
Within 30 minutes, you were told this story before the identity of the shooter came out, and I want to know how that happened.
From a phone call.
Someone told you who the shooter was before the authorities
They never told me a name. They thought it was a teenager.
Well, then how did you know that there was this so-called relationship?
Shortly thereafter.
How did you know 30 minutes after this happened that this was a lover's quarrel, which is what you said 2 days ago?
Yes, it's what I was told.
It's what you were told.
Yes.
I know you're a church-going woman. I hope you get down on your knees and pray about this.
Well, great. And you too. I hope you go to church too.
Good for you. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hope that you're forced to resign your position as alderman in Franklin, Tennessee. It is a gross display of lies and innuendo what this woman is doing. And she needs to be called out on it. And if I seem to be harsh on her, it's because I was. Because I've spoken to enough people and I have enough sources that understand that this woman is a liar. We'll be back.
5:02, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 85 degrees and another sunny, beautiful day in Nashville. That red flag warning in relation to brush fire still in effect for the next 2 hours here in the mid-state. Weather and traffic just a few minutes away. A House Ethics Committee founded that Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell violated the Tennessee GA policy on workplace discrimination and harassment. The 39-year-old lawmaker has since resigned. Channel 5's Phil Williams reports that, quote, potentially thousands of dollars, end quote, have been spent to relocate one victim to move out of an apartment close to Campbell to go to another part of the state for the rest of that woman's internship. Campbell allegedly referenced a second intern that was 19 years of age that was also being investigated. Media at the time was unaware of that information. Campbell has denied that any sexual advances or conversations occurred. When asked if the girls were lying, he said yes. He calls the conversations he had with these women consensual, while the women have say they were uncomfortable, even afraid of being around Campbell. He was not removed from his position or any committees, but has now resigned. Over to the nation's capital, House Republicans passed a bill that would prohibit transgender women and girls from participating in female sports. Here's Jay O'Brien.
The Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act was passed along a party line vote, not a single Democrat in favor of it. After the vote, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy said it was a, quote, great day for Americans, for fairness, for families, and most importantly, for female athletes. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, meanwhile, slammed the bill, saying Republicans were trying to sensationalize an issue that, quote, doesn't really exist in the way that they are falsely portraying. The bill likely to have a rocky path going forward in a Democrat-controlled Senate.
Right now in Tennessee, Metro Police report that two 18-year-olds were arrested today after allegedly shooting at officers. This was in North Nashville on Buchanan Street. Multiple shots were fired. Officers were there because they were responding to a suspicious persons call. Shortly after, 18-year-olds Daniel Prisco and Jason Valentine were found arrested. They both fled the scene of the shooting. Both Prisco and Valentine have been charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault and on an officer and evading arrest. No officers were hurt, and the patrol vehicles were not damaged either, and the gunfire was a result of that. A humanitarian crisis is ongoing in the Sudanese capital of Khartoum as fighting continues in that country. More than 600 people have been killed since the conflict started on Saturday. U.S. officials urging both sides to come to the negotiating table. President Biden has now authorized the Pentagon to move forward with pre-positioning military forces and developing options in case there's a need to evacuate Americans that are in Sudan. Here's State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel during a press briefing.
We are in communication with American citizens. We are offering assessments about security measures and other precautions. We are in touch with our personnel. We are in touch with Ambassador Godfrey. We continue to have full accountability with the team in Khartoum.
And that's the latest news. Traffic and weather upcoming. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is 10 minutes after 5. Good afternoon. Welcome to The Drive. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We thank you for your participation. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative. You're always welcome to opine on the Super Text line or call us up, 615-737-9986. Now's a great opportunity. We've got Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton coming up at 5:35 today. Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson at 6:05. It is a busy news day. Obviously, you by now, I would hope, if you've been listening to Super Talk for any length of time, you perhaps know that one member of the House of Representatives has resigned. And no, it's not a member of the Bullhorn Trio. It is a member of the Republican Party and apparently a part of the leadership of the Republican Party. At least that's what he's being referred to. He was the vice chair of the House Republican Caucus. His name is Scotty Campbell, and he has resigned due to allegations made against him, filed with the Ethics Committee. We'll talk more about that at 5:35 today. In the meantime, I want to reflect on a conversation that we just had, and if you missed it, I'll kind of catch those of you just joining us up for a moment and explain why I was so heated, angry, and passionate during my conversation with Gabrielle Hansen. Gabrielle Hansen is a person I do not know. I became aware of her due to a podcast that she was on in which she claimed to have intimate, detailed knowledge of what happened at the Covenant School on the day that it happened, knowledge that we played on the air, and she confirmed that she stood by. I do believe that she should be held to a higher standard, considering that she's an alderman at large for the city of Franklin. I believe it is an embarrassment for the city of Franklin that this woman is an elected official. And I said as much at the end of our interview. If you missed it, and I won't belabor the point, Gabrielle Hansen claims that she claimed that she had a premonition that something like this was going to happen, be that as it may. She then claimed that she had a conversation, could not remember if she called the person or the person called her, but she had a conversation with a person that she would not name 30 minutes after the events at Covenant School occurred, in which she was told the full story. I'm not going to repeat the full story because I believe it is chock full of lies, and it certainly is chock full of actual inaccuracies. I noted some of those inaccuracies as I was listening to the podcast that she was on a couple of days ago. And it was because of those inaccuracies that I invited her on the show today. I believe that Gabrielle Hansen is putting herself in front of dead people. And that's wrong. She's making claims that were debunked hours after they came up and standing by them. It was initially reported very soon after this event occurred that Pastor Scruggs, Chad Scruggs, was counseling the shooter. That was according to a former pastor at the school, who then later said that he was mistaken and that he apologized for the inaccurate statement. You see, when you further these types of lies and inaccuracies, you galvanize untruths in the minds of the people that had to suffer through that day. When you claim, and it might seem like a small thing to some, but it is not to me, especially when people like this are in positions of authority. When you claim that young Haley Scruggs was targeted, when the facts of the case do not present that is true. Now, look, this woman said she wouldn't reveal the source of her information. I'm not going to reveal the source of my information either, but I know people that have read the manifesto, that have looked at portions of the manifesto, and that have told me that this is not the case. I'm not claiming to have any special or particular information outside of that which we can glean in the media to try to make sense of the senseless as we try to do this. But I do think it's wrong when you present factually inaccurate statements about the dead. I do think it's wrong when you run around presenting on public forums that you know exactly what happened and how and why when it's not true. When you say that Cynthia Peak was killed with Catherine Kuntz, that's not true. That's a factual inaccuracy in your story. When you say that Mike Hill was accidentally killed by the shooter, that's not true. And for everything that I know about this case, it is not true that the shooter was targeting any particular individual outside of wanting to kill as many people as possible. And this shooter had wanted to kill as many people as possible for the last at least decade of their lives. The truth matters to me, and I hope it does to you. I do not like liars. And I do not like people who choose to put themselves in front of a story like this when people are dead and people are suffering. So if I was rude to Gabrielle Hansen, my reasoning is this. It was on purpose because the woman deserves it. 615-737-9986 is our telephone number, 615-737-9986. The community that we live in continues to suffer over this. And part of my frustration and anger at Gabrielle Hansen and her decision that 30 minutes after the fact that a random person had a conversation with her, she couldn't remember who called who or whatever. But she has this own special, particular, unique, factually accurate information that nobody else has but her. It just hurts me to my soul. And it reminds me of how this story has been taken away from the victims. It reinvigorates my frustration and anger at the Bullhorn Trio in the Tennessee House of Representatives. It reinforces my belief that sadly the media is more interested and invested in agenda than it is in truth. And I don't know Gabrielle Hansen from Adam's House Cat. But I know this. The citizens of Franklin ought to be looking for a new alderman. If this is, you can do better than that. It's not only irresponsible, it's gross. Brian is in Mount Juliet. Brian, thank you for your call. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. I had a question. I overheard the conversation between you and the alderman, and I was kind of curious. She said she went based off of something that she heard from a source that she wasn't willing to disclose. And then you heard otherwise from someone who actually walked the scene. My only question is, could the manifesto possibly have some information in there that might expose some of this? And how do you know for sure that your source is more correct than hers? I'm just curious. You kind of went after her pretty hard, and she stood by her word.
That's fair. That's fair, and I understand, and it is fair. I would love nothing more than to tell you who my source was, Brian, but that would be a violation of confidence. I promised someone.
You asked her who hers was,
and she didn't tell me.
Right.
She didn't tell me.
And you're not telling me yours. So my question to you is, what's so good about your source over her source?
I know.
At the end of the day,
I mean,
nobody was there.
No. I mean, it's a fair question, but let's walk through this, right? I trust my source because I know my source, and I know my source was on the scene. I know my source walked the scene. I know, I know that person, right? And I know that they would not lie to me about the factual evidence that was laid out at the scene of the Covenant School. So but Brian, you don't know because I have promised not to say. So you get to decide whether you believe me or not. I think Gabrielle Hansen is full of crap. I don't believe that anybody talked to her 30 minutes after with any identifiable information. I don't believe that anyone with any factual information called her 30 minutes. I mean, just think about it, Brian. Do you believe that somebody called her 30 minutes after this shooting happened and told her exactly what happened?
I think we're going to find out if we can get the manifesto out.
Well, but, I mean, it's a question. I'm not coming after you. But, see, my source told me weeks after, right? She says that she was called 30 minutes after the shooting happened, and they told her everything that had happened before the identity of the shooter was known.
So here's the thing. It's a question of whether or not she went there to kill lots of people or certain people. And that manifesto will tell you that. I believe it will, and I believe that's why they're not releasing it. And I think until we know for sure, she stood by her source. She stood by what she said. I think we should give her the benefit of the doubt until the manifesto
I'm not giving her a bit of the benefit. She had factual information wrong in the story that she told, Brian. I know that, and she conceded to it.
Source.
No. It is a matter of fact that Cynthia Peak and Catherine Kuntz were not killed in the same room.
Okay, that may be, but didn't she say that someone was shot accidentally?
She said that Mike Hill was shot accidentally, but she didn't know the order of the shooting. Mike Hill was the first person killed. He was just outside of the doorway when that evil shooter shot through the glass door. He was just to a room down the hall and to the right, and she shot through the door, walked through the door. You can see that on the video. As soon as she walks through the door, soon after, she swings to the right. Mike Hill's coming out of the door, and she shoots him dead. He was the first person that she killed intentionally, not accidentally.
Okay. Well, speaking of the video, I noticed there wasn't any timestamps on it. I thought that was pretty strange. And I also noticed there was a lot of other things that went on with this entire crisis that makes one want to continue to raise questions. And the fact that they're not releasing this manifesto, even Elon Musk commented on Twitter yesterday.
I do believe, and I've been calling for it, and I think you've heard me do it, Brian. I do believe that would clean up some of this. I don't think it's going to clean up everything because it's my source. And once again, you can trust my sources or not. And these are fair. These are very fair comments, Brian, and I appreciate your call. It's my understanding that she does not identify specific people in that manifesto, that she does more broadly and generally talk about wanting to kill people, and she gets very specific about how she plans on doing it. That is what my understanding is. It is 5:23 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Claims made against Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell saying that he made sexual advancements towards 2 interns. Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, he's going to join the drive and talk about those things. Plus, we got some more news right here in Tennessee with a crime story. 5:30 Super Talk 99.7.
Thank you much, Mac Morey. Yes, the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, expected to join us in about a little less than 10 minutes. On the drive, Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson today and tomorrow. Brian back on Monday. We'll get to as many of your calls as possible. I'll shut up and let you talk. It has been a lively day, to say the least. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Let's see who has been holding the longest. I believe it's Todd. Hey, Todd. Glad you called. Good afternoon. Hey, Todd.
Sir.
Hey, Todd.
Good. Yes, sir. You there?
Yes, sir. I'm here. What's on your mind?
Oh, hey, I just want to tell you, you're spot on the alderman from Franklin down there. You are absolutely spot on. And if her source is that good, maybe she needs to go to work for the police department down there in Nashville and give them a little bit of heads up on when stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I agree. I mean, I would love it if the Metro Nashville Police Department would contact Ms. Hansen and try to ascertain exactly what she knew and when she knew it and what she's been told and when she's been told it. That would be a good thing. Dwight is next. Hey, Dwight, how are you? Hey, Dwight. D-White.
Dwayne?
Oh, I'm sorry. It said Dwight. Dwayne. Well, we got the first 2 letters right. Hey, Dwayne,
okay.
You're up.
You're pretty slick, man. Hey, look. This woman had a long connection with this school. She went to that school. So how do you know what you're talking about? This shooter had a long connection with that school. You know that.
Yes, the shooter went to the school. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's true.
Yes, sir. She went to school. She had a long connection with this school.
Yes.
I mean, so how do you know what you're talking about?
Yes, we've now repeated the same thing twice, so I'm going to move on to another caller. Thank you, Dwayne, for the call. I know that I don't talk about things that I don't know about. That's all I can tell you. The things that I try to piece together are things that I believe to be true at the time that I say them, that I've pieced together through information that I've gotten from individuals and sources that I have in Nashville and the surrounding communities. So you can believe me or not. You don't have to not. I mean, it's up to you. Mark is next up. Hey, Mark.
Hey, is Matt?
This is. Thank you for calling, Mark. How are you?
Matt, good, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Listen, first-time caller. I've listened to your station for many years, even before Phil Valentine. And I'm going to take issue with you on that discussion that you had with Gabrielle Hansen for one reason only. I do not know all the facts. I saw the same videos that everybody saw on TV with the shooter shooting her way in and that kind of thing. I don't know who she encountered first except what we read in the paper. But I know Gabrielle Hansen personally from going to church with her. And I can say this, absolutely, hands down, her character is absolutely impeccable. I know her and her family, whatever her sources, whatever it is she had to say, I put trust in her. I mean, here's the thing. With Gabrielle Hansen, I don't believe that you gave her a fair opportunity for public discourse. And that's what you guys in this station is all about, freedom of speech, right? The First Amendment. And I think that the power that you have in the media of trying to shred her and humiliate her on the air was inexcusable. I really do. I trust her more than I trust you, Matt. I'm sorry. That's the way I feel.
That's fair. Mark, you're friends with her. That's fair. Just know that there are factual inaccuracies in the story that she's telling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you know, like I said, I don't know all the facts, but I do know her.
And I would implore upon you, and I understand your friends, and I'm not going to try to dissuade you in any way on that. What you're saying to me is fair, especially coming from someone who's a friend. I would expect that friends of Gabrielle would be mad at me right now. I would expect that. I mean, I'm a grown boy, but here's what I would say.
Well, I'm just calling. I'm calling to defend
here's what I would say. Just tell me how believable it is that someone unrelated to this story would get a phone call 30 minutes after the shooting and get all of the details of the story. Just think about that for yourself. I don't expect you to answer. Just think about that for yourself. And we'll move on from there. Mark, your comments are completely fair. I understand why you're mad at me. I understand. I'd be mad at me too if I were you. It's 5:32 on Super Talk. 99.7 WTN.
.533, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 84 degrees, around an hour and a half left in that red flag warning concerning brush fires in the mid-state. Weather and traffic in just a few minutes. Tennessee Representative Scotty Campbell resigned today after being found guilty of violating the workplace discrimination and harassment policy. There are claims from 2 interns that say he made unconsensual sexual advancements towards them. Potential taxpayer dollars may have been used when relocating one of these interns further away from Campbell during the duration of her internship. Speaker Sexton learned of this incident in a memorandum on March 29th and kept it a private matter. And now News Channel 5's Phil Williams released the story today. Sexton is joining the program live in about 5 minutes right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Republicans in both the House and Senate today said they would pursue very concerning allegations by an IRS whistleblower that the Department of Justice probe into Hunter Biden is being mishandled. Many Republicans were careful not to lean too heavily into the allegations until some relevant committees have an opportunity to vet the nature of these complaints. Democrats say the whistleblower's complaints should be taken very seriously and whistleblower protections should be extended to the individual. Today, Pierre Thomas spoke to the whistleblower's attorney, Mark Lytle, who revealed more about this person's identity.
My client is a career IRS criminal enforcement agent. He's been there for more than a decade. He's a tried and true law enforcement officer.
Hunter Biden's lawyer, Chris Clark, responded to the developments today saying, quote, "It is a felony for an IRS agent to improperly disclose information about an ongoing tax investigation," end quote, and that the complaint is also, quote, "an attempt to harm my client." And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
All right, right back to it is 5:39 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I so appreciate the Speaker of the House of the state of Tennessee, Cameron Sexton, joining us on our hotline on Super Talk and The Drive. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson. Cameron, thank you for your time. I know it's very valuable. It's a busy, busy time in the House of Representatives. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Yeah, I got a few minutes. I appreciate you allowing me to come on.
Well, just let us know when you got to go. Just tell us what we need to know about the happenings of today with one of the members of the GOP, Representative Campbell, resigning today. Tell us what you knew, when you knew it, and how that process works.
Yeah, let me talk about how the process works. The process changed after Jeremy Durham in 2016. At that point in time, Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey and Beth Harwell changed the process to what is being used today. During that process, myself or the speaker, whoever that would be today, it would be me, we received no details of the actions of the ongoings or what happened. And that was done to protect the victim that is potentially filing the complaint or to someone else who filed the complaint. The committee is a bipartisan committee. It's made up of 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, the subcommittee. It's the Workplace Harassment and Discrimination Subcommittee. If someone files a complaint, it goes straight to OLA, which is Office of Legislative Administration. They start conducting a thorough investigation and a review. Then they take it to this subcommittee of workplace harassment and discrimination. This bipartisan, as I said, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. They look into it. They can talk to witnesses. They can continue the investigation. They continue to look at it, and then they decide what corrective actions to take. It's their decision. They make votes. And then when they decide what action they want to take, then they send me a letter and saying that they have made a decision. And then that's where the letter that got released goes into the file at that point. And then the letter is in there, which is open for freedom of information, but the details of the happenings and so forth are not part of that documentation.
Then how is it possible? I'm confused. How is it possible for you as Speaker to make a determination as to whether or not to take some sort of punitive or corrective action?
That's not my decision, Matt.
Whose decision is it?
It's the subcommittee's decision.
So your statement is the subcommittee decided to do nothing?
No, the subcommittee did decide to do things, but that was their decision. They're the ones who take that level of action. That is not the Speaker's role to determine the corrective action.
What did the subcommittee decide to do punitively to Representative Campbell?
Unfortunately, as I said, that is information that can't be released. That's what our Doug Himes, the ethics attorney, has said, that information cannot be released.
So you have had no further information about this incident other than the letter dated March 29th to your office?
I knew no details about the actions. Obviously, I knew that there was a complaint filed, somewhat the nature of it, which would be workplace harassment and discrimination. But as far as knowing the details that were reported today in the media, that would be accurate.
It is my understanding that under the General Assembly's rules, that outside of this memo, and you're telling me something different. I'm just trying to understand, Cameron. So outside of this memo, there's nothing else that the subcommittee can do. What actions could they potentially take, let's say, in a more broad way, not this case, but generally, could they expel a member?
Well, the subcommittee cannot expel a member. I propose that they could make a recommendation to the body to do that. They could make a recommendation potentially to censure.
But then how? Excuse me for interrupting. But then how can the body decide whether or not to take up that recommendation without having additional information about what the subject did?
Right, which is probably not the case. But they could make the case. They could also make a case potentially to ask that individual to resign or do a host of other things. But as I said, this is something that was put in place after the Jeremy Durham, and I think it is something that we need to go back and relook at. I do know that a lot of the information from what I've been advised by ethics counsel is it's the decisions and all that information is in essence to try to protect the victim and also to make sure that they're safe and secure throughout the whole process as well with no retaliation.
You were aware that this ethics complaint had been filed and a decision had been made on the part of the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee that there was an ethical violation at the time that the expulsion hearings were going on for the other 3 members of the body, correct?
I knew that there was a issue, not with any details of an issue that rose to the level of a complaint to go into the Workplace Harassment and Discrimination Subcommittee, which is usually means that that's something against a member. But as far as knowing the details or anything such like that, I did not know.
Were you aware that a decision had been made by the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee to move the intern in question from her living quarters to another facility based on these actions of the member of the body?
Those are things that were discussed in the subcommittee. Those things can't be discussed because that's part of the confidential record that Ethics Council has advised. And those information was to protect the victim and make sure they're safe and secure. And all those decisions, if those decisions were made by the subcommittee, they were done in an effort to protect the victim.
So we, as taxpayers, cannot get any further information about the expenditure of taxpayer money in order to protect an intern working at the state capitol based on ethical violations of a member of the House of Representatives. Is that what you're telling me?
That is what I have been advised by the Ethics Council, yes.
I just don't understand, and Cameron, I'm trying, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I don't understand how the House of Representatives can make a determination whether to expel a member if you aren't made privy to the nature of the ethical violation against that representative.
I do not disagree with you. The problem is that this process and procedure was set up in 2016 after.
Sorry about that. Sorry, get rid of that. I apologize, Cameron. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's fine. This process and procedure was set up after the Jeremy Durham issue in 2016. I think that we need to go back and we're going to need to take another look at this process and procedure after this incident and revise it. But unfortunately, this was what was in place during the time. I think a lot of people have questions about it. I think we need to go back and take a hard look at it and definitely make changes to it.
Based on the information that has come out, are you satisfied with the resignation of Representative Campbell?
He made that decision voluntarily. He decided to resign immediately. I think that was the best decision for him. I believe there's a lot of caucus members who had talked to him as well. In the end, he made that decision himself.
Had media not divulged the information that came out earlier today leading to his resignation, would the general public have ever known about this ethical violation?
Yes, there are information. If someone goes through this process and they're found to be in violation, that's one of the first things the subcommittee determines. One is there a violation? And then two, they take corrective action. So anyone who has been found to have a violation, they would then, regardless of what the corrective action would be, a letter would be placed into their folder that would be public.
What was the corrective action that the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee offered for Representative Campbell? I'm confused because I saw none.
Well, there was, but unfortunately that is up to the subcommittee. And as I said about Ethics Council, unfortunately, based on the 2016 changes to the process and procedure, that is not public.
Well, I bet you're already thinking about this, Cameron, but I would strongly recommend maybe we rethink those procedures because there's not a lot of sunshine there, is there?
I don't disagree with you to take a look at it. I think you also have to remember is corrective action is one thing, but you're also trying to protect the victim and not release the information about them. I think this information came from outside of the Capitol, the releasing of the details. It seems like it wasn't part from inside. And so I think there's two things to look at. One is trying to protect the victim who files the complaint, and then also making sure that there is information that can be disclosed in the future without giving the details.
Listen, a lot of other questions, but I know your time is limited, and I don't want to keep you. But thank you for coming on today to try to answer some of these questions and help us understand the procedure. And good luck with the rest of the session. And we'll talk to you again soon about that session. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. There's Cameron Sexton, the Speaker of the House. I'll be honest with you, folks. I don't understand any of that. I don't understand a bit of it. So when a complaint is filed, it goes to the ethics subcommittee. And the workplace discrimination and harassment subcommittee reviews the complaint. And then they file a letter with the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House isn't allowed to know what, or the members aren't allowed. I mean, y'all just heard it too, right? Y'all just heard what the guy said. I mean, I don't understand a bit of that. And so the public, now I'll try to figure out for my own purposes how the public eventually finds all of this out. Cameron said that there's a way. But how in the world can you choose to take punitive action if the body doesn't understand what the accusations against the member of the House were? Man, been a hell of a day. And it's just 5:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson for another hour, or until they come and get me and take me away in a straitjacket. It has been a rather confusing day, but you know what? Maybe Jack Johnson will make sense of it all. He's coming up, Senate Majority Leader, to talk about winding down their portion of the General Assembly. Before that, Mac Morey's coming up with a few headlines. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hang in there.
.602, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 84 degrees right now in Nashville. Complete weather and traffic in just a few minutes. A Tennessee representative, Scotty Campbell, has been found guilty of violating the workplace discrimination and harassment policy of the Tennessee GA. Campbell's resigned. The claims detail that Campbell made sexual advancements to two different interns. Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, learned of this situation on March 29th in a memorandum, and the story just became public. Speaker Sexton joined the drive to discuss the matter and what the subcommittee actually has the power to do.
When they decide what action they want to take, then they send me a letter and saying that they have made a decision, and then that's where the letter that got released goes into the file at that point. And then the letter is in there, which is open for freedom of information, but the details of the happenings and so forth are not part of that document.
Sexton said the subcommittee is made up of 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. They do not have the power to actually expel or suspend any members, but just make recommendations. Speaker Sexton doesn't have that power to make corrective actions either. Any additional information on the allegations made towards Campbell can't be displayed to the House. Sexton says this is to try and protect the victim. He mentioned maybe taking a look at that policy in the future. Sexton said that Campbell made the decision to resign on his own, but did talk to other lawmakers before deciding. And over in the nation's capital, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries clashing with Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy today over the passage of a bill that would bar transgender women and girls from female sports. Here's Jay O'Brien.
The top Democrat in the House of Representatives not mincing words about a Republican-backed bill that would amend Title IX to bar transgender women and girls from female sports.
Extreme MAGA Republicans are trying to sensationalize an issue that doesn't really exist.
Republicans saying they believe this is a winning issue for them and stressing the bill focuses on fairness.
There's a reason why Title IX was created. There's a reason why there's men and women's sports.
Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy there. The bill will likely face stiff resistance in a Democrat-controlled Senate.
Here in Tennessee, Channel 4 reports that Metro Police are looking for a driver and the car that was involved in a hit-and-run crash. It struck 5 children. Surveillance footage shows this car turning and hitting kids all aged 5 to 10. This was on Horton Avenue and 12th Avenue South. The driver was turning right onto Wedgwood Avenue. If anyone has any information on this vehicle or driver, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Three hours down and 1 to go. It's Matt Murphy and The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WT. And I am in for Brian Wilson. Never you fear. Brian is back. I mean, I know that some of you who are hitting me up on the Super Text line will be glad when Brian is back on Monday, boy, because I've made you mad because I was mean to an alderman in Franklin, Tennessee. You can hear that on the podcast a little bit later on. And yes, I was mean, and I completely own that. I was a little bit rude as well. I completely own that. But you can listen to all of that on the podcast on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 99.7WTN.com. Now, we also had a great conversation with Cameron Sexton, primarily about some of the news that broke today in the House of Representatives regarding the resignation of Scotty Campbell. He was a representative out of Johnson County. He chose to resign as information came out about an ethical complaint that was filed against him that eventually reached the Workplace Discrimination and Harassment Subcommittee. As Cameron described it, and I won't go through the complete details because we've got yet another high-profile guest in studio with us. But as the speaker described it, some of the rules were changed prior to my time. You folks are probably a lot more privy to some of this information than me, but there was a complaint against a member, and some of the rules were changed based on how all of that shook out. And Cameron accepts the fact that perhaps leadership needs to look into a reworking of some of these rules to make it more sunshiny with regard to exactly what's happening, what our representatives are doing, what they're being accused of, and what the consequences of these accusations, should they be proven to be true, would be for the entire body. So we'll leave that aside for a moment. We move over to the other body, which has been relatively quiet, and welcome back to the show Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, who joins us in studio after a rather eventful day. What are you guys doing over in the Senate? I mean, in the House of Representatives, it's nutso. And what are y'all doing over there? Just pinochle, bingo? What's going on?
No, we're doing the people's business. Actually, we actually passed the state budget today on the floor. Very excited, and passed unanimously. And I always enjoy seeing that. 33 out of 33 senators voted for the proposed state budget, which I have the honor of sponsoring, and a lot of really, really good stuff in the budget.
You know, I'm going to be accused after my previous two interviews today. I'm going to be accused of being too nice to you, but you know, it goes with the territory because you guys seem to be handling a number of issues that are very important to the people of Tennessee. Not the least of which was the transportation bill that was signed by the governor. Right. I want to start here. How excited are you about that? That it is a way to solve some of the issues, some of the transportation issues that we see existing in the state of Tennessee without burdening taxpayers who aren't going to utilize the service.
Exactly. Well, first of all, it's a comprehensive bill dealing with traffic congestion. We know that that's a problem. We have a $26 billion backlog of road projects that need to be done. We have roughly $500 million a year to spend on those projects. So do the math. That's a pretty big hole. And so what we did, the budget we passed today, is we appropriated in non-recurring dollars, one-time money, because we have the money, $3.3 billion to go towards that. And we also passed legislation to expedite the way road projects are done, get rid of some of the bureaucracy, go to a more of a design-build model so that these projects can be done I mean, some of these, if you're talking about a big interstate project, it could be a 15-year timeline. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get that down to maybe 5 or 6 years or 7 years, and these are big projects. So we did that. We did obviously authorize the choice lanes, which will be used in very selective areas where there's really, really high congestion. And that $3.3 billion, $300 million of that will go to local government so they can use it on your county roads and your city roads and that type of thing. And then TDOT, the Department of Transportation, has 4 regions across the state, $750 million per region to jumpstart some of these very expensive projects. So it's a big deal. It's a game changer. We're going to add, the people who study this stuff tell us that in the next 20 years, we're going to add 1 million people to the greater Middle Tennessee area. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people. And so that's a lot more cars on the road. That's a lot more congestion. So it's important that we be taking those steps now.
You mentioned the budget that was passed by the Senate, and you mentioned unanimously. I noted that HB 0104, that's the rape backlog kit bill, it's my understanding it wasn't a part of it. Or it did not make it through. It was dead for the session. Is that correct?
Well, that one particular bill did. There was a bill dealing with the timing of these rape kits.
A 30-day deal.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Which, by the way, I fully support. But we can pass all the laws we want. If TBI doesn't have the manpower to be able to do it, they're not going to be able to do it. So here's how we did it. And you need to know that last year, in the last fiscal year, we authorized 25 new positions for these analysts that do these rape kits and do the scientific forensic analysis of them. That's about $5 million. This year, we added another 25 positions, about $4.5 million to that as well. And then we also authorized them to draw down some federal grants to be able to outsource to private sector companies that can do the analysis on these rape kits. What TBI is telling us is what we're hearing from everyone. It's very difficult to hire people right now. Mm-hmm. Pay is much more competitive. These are very technically specific jobs. You have to have a certain skill set and certain education level. So we've had really lengthy hearings on that. It's a problem, and we've known about this problem for 2 or 3 years now, and we need to work on it. Law enforcement shouldn't have to wait months and months in order to get this DNA evidence back, especially when it means that there's a potential sexual predator out on the streets. So we're working with TBI. They told us what they need, what they need in order to be able to get these done faster. We've stepped up to the plate and given them the money.
All right, so is it fair what I just heard you say is instead of setting arbitrary deadlines that TBI will not be able to meet, instead find out what they need to meet said deadlines?
They want to do it faster.
Right.
Trust me, these are not just what you might think would be government bureaucrats sitting around, twiddling their thumbs. These are dedicated professionals over at the TBI, and they want to get these done quicker. And so that's how government works. They came to us and said, we've got to have more money to be able to pay more to hire and be able to retain these positions. Because here's what happens in state government oftentimes. Someone will come and work in state government for a few years, get a certain level of experience, and then they get hired away by the private sector and go make a lot more money. And so, and I could go into a lot of detail about the tens and tens of millions of dollars we appropriated to try to retain good quality state employees, and certainly TBI is part of that.
It happens with teachers.
Law enforcement.
And it's my understanding that teachers will see a nice floor-level pay salary, and that will be increased for the next several years. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, we're going to raise our base entry-level pay for teachers over the next 3 years up to $50,000, and we won't stop there, by the way. And we also appropriated, in addition to the TISA funding that we provided for K-12 education, which is $1.1 billion in new money to go towards public education, we also appropriated $125 million for across-the-board teacher raises. We are better than we were a few years ago in terms of being competitive with regards to states that are around us. You know this, Matt. A lot of people compare us to New York or Massachusetts. Well, those states have a much higher cost of living. They have a state income tax. There's a lot of other things. So when adjusted for those other cost of living differentials, we look at kind of the Southeast, the states around us, the contiguous states. Can a teacher in Tennessee go down to Alabama and make a lot more money, or to Kentucky? We need to be competitive in that area, and we're getting much more so.
No, it's one of the reasons that you will not find this libertarian, while I might be against in principle things like government funding for a stadium. For example, I also recognize that on balance, we do not have a state income tax, and we very much depend on money coming into the state through tourism, et cetera, et cetera. So, you have to balance those.
You have to balance
obviously.
that. And I want to give you one little tidbit about the budget, and it's kind of hard to explain and unless you do some accounting and ledger sheet, balance sheet. But one of the things, the budget I presented today that I made a special point to emphasize, in this budget that we just passed, we have $2.6 billion in recurring revenue growth that we've experienced as a state that we did not put into the base. We did not recognize that as recurring money. We took it and used it to put money into our rainy day fund, to fully fund our OPEB liability, other post-employment benefits, to fully fund our retirement plan. These are one-time chunks of money we can put in that are going to save us money into the future. But if not one thing changes about our economy, sales tax, revenue growth, anything, if nothing changes, if there's zero growth, when we show up this time next year, we have a $2.6 billion recurring surplus because we did not recognize it this year.
You kind of dig that. That's good.
That's impressive.
One more very specific point on the budget, and I want to get to the concept of red flag laws. So we had Mike Sparks on, Representative Mike Sparks, who was frustrated because he said, and I have not researched this on my own, but I trust Representative Sparks.
Sure.
He said that the bill that he's had in the hopper the last couple of years that's been approved by the legislature to make gun-safe sales tax free is not getting through this year. And I said, well, it would seem to me that would be a good move considering that guns are on the minds of a lot of people, gun safety. We have people like Amy Grant and Sheryl Crow were standing in the legislature lobbying you to help us make sure that these guns don't get in the hands of the wrong people.
Right.
And this would seem to be a good incentive. And I know that it's been going on for 2 years. What do you know, if anything, about that?
Representative Sparks is correct. We've done it for the last 2 years, and we decided not to, again, fund that this year. And here's the reason, and I'll explain some things that we did do. We're a sales tax driven state. That's where we get 2/3 of our revenue. And I believe in that. I believe in consumption taxes. I think that is a good way to generate your revenue versus income taxes, property taxes, statewide property taxes, at least, and those types of things. We don't want to begin chipping away and compromising that. When we agreed to do the no sales tax on gun safes a couple of years ago, it was kind of understood that we would do this for a year or two and make a big deal out of it, encourage people, go buy you a gun safe if you don't have one, and get that in. But we don't want to make these types of things permanent. Now, here's what we did do. We put $140 million in for school resource officers in schools. We created a safety grants that schools can draw down from, $40 million for public schools and $14 million for private schools that they can use to harden their facilities and hire school resource officers. So certainly the whole conversation about safety is an important one. But we put, when you add it all up, it's almost $35 million that we appropriated towards school safety. So yeah, we did gun safes for a couple of years, and that was good. That was smart. But let's restore that now, and let's move on to something else.
And friends can disagree on this, but can you understand why someone like me would feel like maybe that's not the best optics, especially considering the Covenant School shooting? And people asking for they're asking for something.
Sure,
they're looking for something, and a lot of people I think are looking in the wrong places. And I understand what you're saying, but at a price tag of I don't know what the price tag is, so I can't even speak to it. But
I don't recall offhand.
But look, I understand from a sales tax perspective what you're saying, and I get it, and the audience can consume that and kind of figure out where they are on it. Now, look, since you've been here, I've been distracted. I'm going to tell you why. The folks looking on, hey, Mason, can you see on Super Talk TV? Can you see? Do you color coordinate your pins to your ties? Because
no, I don't. That's clearly an accident. So that's hilarious.
That's
pretty impressive.
Jack's got a pretty strong tie game. Don't think that it's gone without notice. I feel like my Hawaiian shirt game's pretty good.
I want to know when I'm going to see you in a tie. I mean, does that ever happen? Is it rare, I suppose?
I regretted. I went to a function at State Capitol, and I regretted not wearing a tie because I was a new guy. But I had a coat. I had a suit on, but I didn't have a tie
Most
on.
visitors to the Capitol aren't wearing. I wouldn't be wearing one if it wasn't in the rules of the
Look, if
General
I wanted
Assembly,
to be
I have
respectable, Jack, my wife would tell you that I would find a razor first, and then I'd work on the tie. We're going to talk about the so-called red flag. You and I haven't had a chance to talk.
Yeah.
Jack was slated to come on my show a day that all what broke loose last week, and I had to move into the afternoon show because of circumstances beyond our control. And so Pamela got to interview you on the day that this little clandestine recording broke. And look, I know you. I feel like I understood exactly what you're saying, but I'm going to let you speak for yourself in just a moment and talk about where this concept of order of protection is at 6:20 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Representative Scotty Campbell resigned today after allegations that he made sexual advances to 2 interns. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton addressed that today on The Drive. We take a look at that plus the money news. That and more, 6:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A few more moments with Senator Jack Johnson. Speaking with him about activities going on in the Senate. Boy, it's a snooze fest over there in the Senate. The House of Representatives, that's where everything's happening. No, I kid. I kid because I love it. No, you were in the news. Some of your political enemies took out the long knives because somebody recorded a conversation that you had in your, I assume it was in your office. And I assume it was a lengthier conversation about the dynamics of getting legislation passed. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the accusation by your detractors is, well, Jack's trying to change the language so that he can get red flag laws passed in the state of Tennessee. What do you say to that?
Well, I say look at my record. I look at I've been in the Senate 16 years, going on 17 years now. There have been numerous attempts to pass various variations of a red flag law. I've opposed them consistently. I oppose them now. I oppose what the governor has put forward. Excuse me, you're right. There was 20-something seconds of a 40-plus minute conversation that got into great depth about that. Here's what I always say when people bring up red flag laws or support of those. I say, well, first of all, you need to explain to me what do you mean by that, because that term means different things to different people. I can tell you what I think it means, and I think it means taking your guns without due process, or and not having basically being guilty until you're proven innocent, and that's not how our system works. But I do think we have a mental health issue, and I think there are issues. And I think one consistent theme you will see with these shooters, and we're going to learn more about the individual who committed this horrific act at Covenant as more information becomes public. But almost to an instance, you can determine that those people were suffering from some type of mental health crisis. So it's not about the guns. We don't need to turn to, we got to do something about guns. No, let's do something about people that are suffering from a mental health crisis. And that's what I was telling this individual. And I said, but to me, that is not a red flag. But if you call it that, then it gets labeled that. And
it's DOA.
And it's DOA.
Whether it's worthy or not.
That was the point. So for those who would accuse me of otherwise, again, luckily I've got a record to stand. I'm A+ rated by the NRA and a lifetime member. And so I say, look at my record.
Do you understand where the governor's coming from?
I really, I admire the governor, and he has become a very, very close friend, and he's been a really, really good governor. And I respect his authority and his ability to put forth a proposal. I don't support it. I don't think it's the right answer. And I think we should, and that's why there will be no vote, not just because of me. The support in the General Assembly is not there for what the governor proposed. But
I would note, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I would note, because I know our liberal friends like to listen to the show,
Sure.
That is a reflection of the people that you serve.
Yes.
Right? This is not a decision being made solely by you, because if you make regular decisions, particularly on issues this emotional,
Sure.
against your constituents, you're going to be out on your keister next election,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
so this is a reflection of the people of Tennessee.
And that's the way it works up there. And there are 33 senators. There's 99 House members. Some of my colleagues, even some of my Republican colleagues, support what the governor's put forward. And so, but here's what I can say to everyone. Can we at least agree in all this division and rancor and partisanship? Can we all at least agree, and I believe we can, we need to do whatever we can do to help prevent these types of horrendous things from happening. And if we can start there, okay, then let's bring ideas to the table. Let's hash them out. And that's what you're going to see, I think, over the coming days and weeks. And even though we're preparing to adjourn from our General Assembly, the governor can, I don't know if he will, he can call us into special session. That may very well happen. And I'm open to that. We need to continue this conversation. I think probably the majority of my colleagues think we need to focus on getting treatment to people who are in this crisis.
I did a little dive into what Tennessee law says about getting people mental help.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the guns for a minute. And is it possible that that's an area where we can have a discussion about strengthening some of those laws? I'm not talking necessarily about involuntary incarceration, right, or into a mental institution or whatnot, but it's my understanding that if someone is deemed to be a threat to themselves or to other people, that individuals within their family or even law enforcement can petition a court to help get them some mental help, and can hold them, I think it's 72 hours, in order to get them a mental evaluation. That having nothing, I mean, I don't know if that is enough in and of itself, and maybe we need to focus on that and make people aware that that is available to them as a tool to battle mental illness. Has nothing to do with guns. Has everything to do with the mental incapacity to know right from wrong.
Exactly. And I'll go a step further. Okay, if you support having some kind of system where you disarm or you take the guns away from the person, I would say, well, if someone's in that kind of a serious mental health crisis, let's separate them by getting them help. Let's getting them treatment. And even if you do support taking their weapon, what's going to stop them from what happened in Wisconsin and they get in their car and they drive through a parade? Let's look at the totality of the problem. And I think it's mental health delivery. It's having ways for loved ones and family members and coworkers and neighbors to be able to get someone who's in this crisis to get them help. It's not about guns. It's about treating the mental health issue.
You mentioned the double S special session. If that were to come, how does that functionally work in the state of Tennessee? Does the governor call for a specific purpose and then the legislative body comes in to deal with that specific purpose? Is that how it works?
That's correct. So the way it works, the governor issues a call, is what we call it, a call for special session. It's referred to as the call. And in the call, he states specifically what we can talk about or what we can pass legislation regarding. So if he calls for a special session, for example, he called one relative to the Blue Oval City deal. So he called us into special session, and then that way, once you're there, you can't file bills about any subject matter. Now, any member can file a bill on the call, on something that fits within the call, but typically you limit yourself to that particular. And by the way, the General Assembly can call ourselves into special session. That happens rarely, but we did it in October of 21 to stand up to Joe Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandates, which I was proud of.
Jack, thank you for your time. Thank you for the explanation. Get some action going in the Senate tomorrow, would you?
No,
y'all are about done, right?
We really are. Yeah, the House is working hard today. They've got a busy day tomorrow. We've got a handful of bills remaining that we need to deal with, but I fully suspect the Senate is prepared to adjourn tomorrow, and hopefully the House can catch up to us.
Y'all have to do it at the same time?
Yeah, we have to basically adjourn at the same time, and I think we can. I think the House is hard at it. They might have a bit of a late night tonight and tomorrow night, but we should wrap up.
Well, I like working you guys. I want a special session. I just want you guys to work even harder. That's what we need to get our money's worth out of you.
All right.
Jack, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
There's Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson. We'll be back in a moment. Late for the news with Mac Maury on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.33 past the hour of 6 o'clock. Mac Maury with your top stories. 82 degrees. That red flag warning in regards to brush fires here in the mid-state, ending in about 30 minutes. Weather and traffic in about 5 minutes. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton joined the drive today to discuss Representative Scotty Campbell's resignation after violating the Tennessee General Assembly discrimination and harassment policy. Channel's 5 Phil Williams investigated on this story and has found that there are 2 interns claiming Campbell made sexual advancements towards them. One says that after denying his request to hug her and give her cannabis gummies, he grabbed her around the neck. Campbell has denied any wrongdoing and claims all conversations were consensual and weren't sexual in nature. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton learned of this on March 29th, but claims that the subcommittee is not allowed to release details in hope of protecting the victim, so he didn't know all of the details.
I knew that there was a issue, not with any details of an issue that rose to the level of a complaint to go into the workplace harassment and discrimination subcommittee, which usually means that that's something against a member. But as far as knowing the details or anything such like that, I did not know.
Over to Wall Street, here's Derry Albinger.
From ABC News, Wall Street now, a Thursday slide for the markets. The Dow fell 110 points, and NASDAQ gave up 98. The S&P closed down 25. Stocks were pulled lower by big losses for Tesla and AT&T, and more signals that the economy may be slowing. Amazon's asking Virginia for nearly $153 million in state incentive payments. They'd be the first funds to be paid out after the tech giant agreed in 2018 to build a headquarters complex in the state. Twitter says this time it's for real. Many high-profile users have lost the blue check marks, which helped verify their identity and distinguish them from imposters on the Elon Musk-owned social media platform. After several false starts, the site is now making good on its promise to remove the blue checks from accounts which don't pay a monthly fee to keep them. Twitter had about 300,000 verified users under the original blue check, many of them journalists, athletes, and public figures.
And a breaking story from Fox News. President Biden is expected to make his bid for a second term as a president official next week. The 80-year-old President Biden is hoping to make the announcement via campaign video on April 25th, which will be the 4-year anniversary of his 2020 campaign launch. Again, that's from Fox News. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 6:41. A few more moments with, well, you and me and Mason's back there. Mac Morey's packing it up, getting ready to take off as we wind down the drive for this Thursday edition. The drive home, it's getting better. I'm being told that 40 eastbound, the lanes are open now, is just getting ready as we were coming back. Let me see if I can find this. Well, where's my SmartWays app? Who took my SmartWays app? Oh, no. I'll find it. One way or the other. Let me see if I can pop this in here. One way or the other, hope the drive's going well for you, and hope we've entertained you as much as humanly possible for the last 3.5 hours or thereabouts. We've got a little more time for your telephone calls, 615-737-9986. I'm not predicting anything, but maybe someone from the executive branch of government will be on the drive tomorrow. That's all I want to say about it. That's all I'm going to say about it. We're working to try to see if we can't make that happen. I mean, we had the Speaker of the House on today. We had the Senate Majority Leader on today. Had our conversation with Alderman Gabrielle Hansen, for what it's worth, all of which will be podcast up and running. Are we doing that because there's a little confusion? Because normally, a lot of my podcasts go on and someone asked me this. I don't know how you're doing it, Mason. And neither way is wrong and neither way is right. I was like, I think are you talking about which show I'm putting in? Which show? Because I'm subbing in for Brian on the drive. So this podcast could, which way are we going to do it? I mean, you tell me.
I would say, so depending on what the topic is, I'm putting them all under Brian.
Okay.
Just because it's under the drive.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
The only interview that I have put under your name is one with Taylor Hicks. Felt like that one's a little more personal.
Giddy up. I like that. So the Taylor interview under me, everything else under the drive. Brian back on Monday, by the way. All right, let's talk to Larry in Clarksville. We got Gracie coming up as well. Hey, Larry, how are you?
I'm fine, Brother Matt. Thanks for taking my call. And first of all, I have to apologize because I missed a portion of your show because my former next-door neighbor offered, who's a disabled Army vet, offered to come over and mow my backyard because I wasn't able to.
Oh, that's cool. Hey, Larry, anytime you need a grass cutter, you call me, man.
Well,
I'll come up there.
Listen, he loves my zero turn. But what I wanted to say was, and like I said, I missed a portion of your call because when he showed up, I had to go open the gate, let him in the backyard, and explain to him how to drive the zero turn. Were you able to ask Jack Johnson why we did not fund processing the rape kits faster? And then
yes, well, no, he did. Well, he did answer that question, and here was the answer: that what did not happen was there was a bill that would have forced the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to process within 30 days. And what Jack told me, and I don't think I'm getting this wrong, was that you can pass that all you want, but if you don't provide them the money, then you're not going to be able to get it done. What they funded was an additional hiring of 25 additional workers to process it faster, and I think there's some additional money going into that arena as well. So on top of the 25 additional workers from last year's session, they've got another 25 funded this year to get more bodies to process those kits faster. And I believe there's some funding to develop, he said, public-private partnerships so they can farm out some of the rape kits to private companies that can process them for the state.
All right. Well, thank you for just discussing that. And then my other question is, for this older lady from Franklin that is so important that evidently somebody from the MNPD called her within 30 minutes to give her all the details, or she calls somebody with MNPD within 30 minutes to get all these details. I mean, Matt, if there is just a darn wreck on the interstate that involves a death, the interstate is shut down for hours. There is no way. I'm trying to take my head, and I don't want to be put on permanent super secret probation. There is no way this woman knew within 30 minutes all the facts. Metro PD did not know within 30 minutes all the facts.
Well, if I seemed incredulous, it's because I was. It is.
Well, you should have been. Listen, you were much nicer than I would have been. Of course, that don't take a whole lot. I mean, you know me, but I mean that wouldn't take a whole lot. And now the neighbor was getting close to me with my mower. So
wait,
but
so
no,
he came. Hold on, Larry. Your neighbor came over, but he's using your mower.
Yeah, but he lives 14. Well, he's my ex next door neighbor. He lives 14 miles away from me.
Well, that's good of your neighbor. That I love neighbors helping neighbors. Larry, you go sit on the front porch and sip a drink of your choice, as long as it's not a Bud Light, and you watch that neighbor. It's Gracie's turn. Hey, Gracie, how are you? You know, I worried that this would happen. You make the woman wait, and she leaves. She gets away from the phone, and then you have to hold and then go to Mike in Mount Juliet. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, man. I just want to tell you, I appreciate you taking the alderman from Franklin to task, because here's the thing. These families that suffered through this ordeal have had to go through so much. They're human. They see televisions. They hear radio. You know, the last thing you need is an elected official that was not there. She obviously had things wrong. And if you're going to do that and you're going to go on someone's podcast, you need to tell who told you. And the first thing she should have done was go to the damn police department and tell them what she knew. You know, that's the problem. Everybody in power wants everybody to think they know something nobody else knows. You know, just do your job. Stay out of it. Let the people investigate, and the people that are in the know do their job and finish it up the way it should be done. And have some respect for the family.
Well, and Mike, you hit, and I'm so glad you called, because you are an example of why I talked to her the way that I did. And I know that I was rude to her, and I get it. But the families are my focus. And while the families still suffer, and let me be clear, I believe I know what I know. I was not there either. But I've talked to sources that I trust and I believe in, who have imparted what information they can give me. I don't pretend to understand the full motivation of the shooter. I don't understand the nature of the relationship the shooter had with that school and how it might have led her back to that school. I know she thought about shooting up Opry Mills Mall and decided the security was too great. It's my understanding that some 10 years ago, she made initial plans with another person to shoot up a high school. But I don't pretend to understand the full complexity of what she knew or did not know or thought and did not think. Part of the reason I was frustrated with this person. Coming back, we'll lighten the load. We'll tell you some stories we won't get to on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, this has got to make you feel better over the dinner table. Elon Musk apparently just took away Hillary Clinton's verification badge on Twitter. Isn't that fun? Hey, Gracie, I got 30 seconds, but you've waited so long, it's yours. What's on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to let you know. You know, when I first heard the story on your show from Pamela, I had a knee-jerk reaction. I was ready to pounce, but then I talked to a few people, and I found most of these rules did come from when Jeremy Durham was ousted, and the rules were put in place by Speaker
Well,
Beth
call me back.
Carter.
Call me back tomorrow so we can have a full-throated conversation about it, Gracie, because I don't have the time tonight. And I knew I didn't when I went to you, but I wanted to go to you to say goodnight and have a wonderful evening. What a lively show. We'll do it again tomorrow as I sub in for Brian Wilson. It's The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTF.
Hey everybody, Coach Scott Oatsfall here with LT360 Holistic Health, and I want to ask you a question. Are you tired of taking a handful of pills? Are you tired of not sleeping well and waking up rested? If you're one of the tens of millions of Americans right now who aren't enjoying life to the fullest because you suffer from exhaustion and fatigue, food allergies, digestive issue, painful sinus infections, out of control weight gain, high blood pressure and cholesterol, hormone issues, thyroid, diabetes, you and your family deserve so much better. I guarantee you LT360 Holistic Health will always help you make the